We will now begin the City of Boynton Beach Budget Workshop today, July 16th at 5 p.m. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? We have a flag? Where's the to the closet. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We knew where it was. Well, yeah.
May I have a roll call, please? There you go. Here.
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 All right. Before we move on, I'd like to change the agenda with public comments being after budget overview. Is everyone okay with that? All right. May I have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
I'll move. Second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Agenda is approved unanimously. I'd like to say a little bit of thing before we begin. This is our third time doing this as a group, and I know that Commissioner Casello is going to be leaving us. And I just want to thank you all for all the hard work that you have done as us all as a commission. I really appreciate it. And I know that we always don't agree on everything, but if we can agree to disagree, we can move forward. And I look forward to everyone's comments and input, and so that we can still make the best Boynton Beach that it can be. Vice Mayor, do you have any comments? No? All right. Commissioner McCray? Nope. Commissioner Casella? All right. Commissioner Katz?
I thought we were not going to let Joe have a say since he won't be here.
All right.
You went a totally different direction, which I'm okay with.
All right. Okay. We will now begin. May I please have the budget overview?
Okay, Mayor and Commissioners, we are pleased to present to you tonight a $221.5 million budget, which includes not only your general fund, but your utility fund and all your special funds. I'm pleased to state that we were able to prepare a budget tonight that, of course, is balanced without any use of any reserve funds, which is we've been able to do the past couple of years, which is a good sign. And I think that's very telling in and of itself. I think we've captured most of what we hope to do in the next year. I really think we have a very good inclusive budget here. So Tim is going to take us through just a brief overview, and then depending on what you would like in terms of presentations from departments, every department's prepared. Your pleasure on if you want to stick to larger departments and to summarize smaller, you let me know as we get to each one.
We will let you know.
Okay.
All right. So what you have in front of you is a green folder, and in there you've got a copy of the PowerPoint that we're going to go through. So if you can't see it on the screen, you have it in front of you. There's copies at the door for the public. There's a copy of the agenda for tonight, and there's a copy of a proposed millage resolution and a preliminary fire assessment resolution that we'll ask you to consider and adopt probably tomorrow afternoon. So to get started, the purpose of the workshop is to review the proposed operating and capital budgets with the Commission, provide the citizens with an opportunity for comment, approve a proposed millage, and approve a preliminary rate resolution for the fire assessment. Just to give you a note on it, Lori's not recommending any increase in millage. She's leaving it at 7.9 with her recommendation, and she's recommending to leave the fire assessment at $120 per residential unit. The approval schedule today through Wednesday we have set aside for the public workshops to discuss and adopt the proposed items. We've adjusted a couple of these dates from what you saw last week as far as hearings that you'll need. Thursday, September 6th, Thursday, September 6th will be the first public hearing for the proposed budget. We'll consider either moving your commission meeting that week or having a special meeting. Just to give you a heads up, the reason why. Monday of that week is Labor Day. Tuesday, the county is having their budget hearing. Wednesday, the school board's having theirs, and we can't have ours on the same days as the county or school board. Tuesday, September 11th, we're going to request that you do a special meeting at 6 o'clock before your CRA meeting to adopt a final fire assessment. And then Thursday, September 20th, will be the second public hearing to adopt a final millage rate and final budget. So as Lori mentioned, the proposed funding for the city and expenses for the city for the upcoming year is $221.5 million. The four major sources are utility fees, property taxes, capital and bond sources, and transfers in from other funds. And then there's a list of internal service, solid waste fees, public service, intergovernmental, and they go down descending order. On the expenditure side across the city, covering all of our funds, the general fund makes up $91.1 million, water and sewer makes up $48 million, capital funds make up 40, solid waste 11, and again, in descending order, debt service, fleet, golf course, self-insurance, and all the other funds that you'll adopt. So on the general fund, which is what your property tax millage partially funds, the proposed budget for the general fund for the coming year is $91.1 million. Personnel services, as we have talked about in the past, and is normal for a city that provides obviously services, is $68.3 million, or 71% of your general fund budget. And then on the side, it shows you operating expenses at $21 million, capital at $700,000, non-operating at $3.4. If you want to look at it as a service providing of what the city provides for the city, out of the $91.1 million, police and fire, obviously for our public safety, makes up a large percent of our budget, about 70%. And then it's public works, general government, development, recreation, library, ITS, finance, and human resources. So, is that better? So the changes from the current year budget is that we're going down from the 17-18 amended budget. The notation on that is in our current year of 17-18, we have appropriated funds for Town Square for the Phase 1 and Phase 2 agreement, if you recall, in the event that we didn't move forward. So the $93 million for the current year has those funds appropriated in on. So just a couple of highlights of what you're going to see in the 18-19 budget. We have a pension contribution increase for the police and for the fire and for the general employees. This is the last year of a police contract that where we instituted a pay plan 3 years ago. So the impact of that pay plan that's in your budget, the $91 million budget, is $450,000. The Town Square adjustment, the reduction, that's what I mentioned, where we had a large amount appropriated. That's going to be released, so that'll go away. And then in the general fund, what we've included is funding for 2 full-time positions in the police department, a digital and public records specialist, which will assist with the body camera public records request, records manager, which will be a civilian position that will supervise the records division. And then in recreation, we're recommending some part-time positions that will help with closing the parks at night, doing some other monitoring that we need on a daily basis, but not a full-time basis. So here's just another recap. We have funding in the budget for either raises or benefits that arise out of union negotiations. So we have articles open in the blue collar, white collar, the fire contract, and then general or non-represented employees. And we just set aside an amount because it's all subject to bargaining, and then it will be taken out of, oops, sorry about that. It'll be taken out of that amount of the budget. The part-time park rangers are $22,900. The 2 new positions in the police department come to $132,800. In the upcoming year budget, you'll see a new department, you'll see it on the next page, that we're calling Town Square. That involves the payment that will be obligated to of $4.5 million for the rental or the lease payment, and also the lease payment for the interim space. Commissioner?
Yeah, I have a question on park rangers. Will they be under the Park and Rec Department, or will they be under the Police Department?
Recreation. So the next two slides are your comparison by department of what, from the amended budget of this year and the proposed budget of 18-19. And you'll see where you have this large decrease under City Hall General Admin. In the amended budget of this year is where we had appropriated those funds for the Phase 1 and Phase 2 agreement. That will not be there next year, so you'll see a decrease of $9.7 million. But when you go 2 lines down, you'll see a Town Square project of 5.6. And I mentioned that before. What we're also doing this year is we're setting up a new department called Special Events. Here, we've transferred a full-time position and a part-time position out of recreation that handles special events into this department. This is where we're captured the expenses for 4th of July, the holiday parade, and the MLK event. This is going to be a start of any future special events. We'll program in here and budget in here so we can have a good handle on what it costs us to do special events. And if we add special events, we can add the cost right to that, and you'll be able to see what the costs are. I'll just highlight a couple of these. The clerk's office went up because in the current year we have no elections for this past year. The upcoming year we do have elections. We have seats that are up, so we'll have to run elections. We may or may not have a runoff. We need to provide for that just in the event that we have it. If you look under police, which are 3 divisions, the uniform, administrative, and support, they've moved some things around, so you sort of have to look at all of this together. The general increase for the police department itself is about $650,000, I believe, if I do my math halfway decent. Fire went up about $503,000. Remember, in police, that includes the step plan that we have in the contract that's in that budget. In the development category, which is development and building and P&Z, you'll see a decrease and an increase. They're realigning staff within divisions, and so they're moving staff from this division to this division, so you'll see the corresponding increase and decrease. We have an increase in economic development for some incubator programs that we're looking to start and institute to provide some funding for that. Some reductions, all the rest of them are pretty standard. So you see that it went down to 2.1. Just to give you a reference point, departments submit their initial request. They came in at $92.9 million. After review with the city manager, we're presenting the budget of $91.1.
Deb, quick question. Are our streets in good shape that we could actually take money out of street maintenance?
So the street maintenance will be, that decrease there will be staffing because older people have retired, new people have come in. Where you're going to see that the roads and streets are going to be in the capital, that's where we actually do the road work.
Okay.
This is the maintenance part of it. So the general fund alone for $91.1 million. The tax levy, as I said, we're recommending leaving at 7.9. Brings in a net property taxes to the city of $36.3 million. Fund transfers account for 15.9. Intergovernmental, which are shared revenues from the state of Florida, sales tax, state revenue sharing, things like that. 9.3. Charges for services, 6.9. In charges for services will include police and fire contracts that we provide services outside the city limits. Also, the ambulance runs that we do for EMS. The fire assessment, $6.5 million, and again, we're recommending to leave that stable. Franchise taxes, licenses, and permits, fines, interest, and fund balance appropriation, we're glad to say at 0 at this point. Here's your changes in your revenue, on your revenue side. Again, like I said, the property taxes increased based on the increased values that went up about 6.5% average across the city. That means some properties go up more, some properties go up less. The gross went up 2.6 million. Part of that it will be in the CRA district, so part of that will go to the CRA for their TIF, which will increase by 455. So the net effect to the city is we'll increase our property taxes 2.2 million. Florida Power and Light franchise, the business tax and building permits, we increased based on experience and what's going on, what's happened last year, this year, and projected going forward. Building permits, we're assuming that we have some larger projects in the pipeline and that those permits will come in next year. The fire and police service contracts go up based on the service agreements and the programmed increases that we have in those agreements. The ALS billing, which is for your ambulance billing, if you remember, last year we increased the staffing at Station 1, and part of that was that we were going to take over the runs from the private companies and be able to do more ambulance runs, which we have. And that's allowing us, we're on track to come in over $2.5 million this year, and so the track now is 3.2 for next year, or increase of 725. On the two transfer side, you're going to see an increase in the water and sewer. That's based on utility operations. We've set that transfer up based on a percentage of revenue that they're generating. So as their revenue goes up, the transfer goes up to the general fund. Public service tax debt is where the communication taxes go into. We pay our debt service, and we do a transfer to the general fund and a transfer to the general CIP. The budget and the actual does not match every year, so there is some funds left that we can transfer over to the general fund, so that transfer is increased from 6.5 to 7.2. The fund balance that's in the current year 17-18 budget appropriation is 5.8. There's 0 for next year, so that's a decrease.
And that's over and above the emergency fund balance of 9.1 million, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is actually a good lead in.
Tim, I have a question in regards to debt services for this city. When will we be looking for some debt services to be retiring? I'm just saying.
The city only has one outstanding bond, which is the public service tax of 2015 that we refinanced, and it is paid off either in fiscal year 26 or 27. And I can't remember which fiscal year because the CRA pays off theirs on the opposite year. And
We're 26 or
I think we're 26, 2026, and that's 2.4 million. And I'll check and let you know. So this graph is just a historical results of our fund balance and what we set aside for emergency reserve. So as you remember, this commission has a resolution policy in place that we set aside 10% of the upcoming year's budget as an emergency reserve. So what you can see is back in 2008, we had 18.2 million in fund balance. Of that, 7 million was set aside for emergency reserve. You see what occurred during the downturn where we dipped into the reserves and used it. What's happened in the last couple years, we're glad to say and report, is that we're steadily putting some of that back. So at the end of 2017, we ended up with 16.3 million. Of that, 8.3 is set aside for emergency reserves in the current year budget. When you go to 9/30/18, these are estimates. We're estimating that we're not going to increase fund balance at the end of this coming year. Part of that reason is we're incurring costs for Town Square and things like that. And our upcoming budget, if adopted, will be 9.1. So that would be your emergency reserve at the end of 2018 because it's of the upcoming fiscal year's budget. And I just as a note for you, I think it's worth mentioning that this action can only occur when my opinion is when the city commission and the city management is on the same page, because you know, it's very easy for us to bring in budgets and express that we do not need to use fund balance and we need to be conservative. But commissions have the ultimate authority. And it's really something to think about, that you guys have stayed steady and not instructed us to dip into fund balance and dip into use it and stick and allow us to be on that conservative base, because that really has allowed this fund balance to increase, which is what you want to see.
Yeah,
So-
ultimately, we want to see that, probably, that balance between the emergency reserve and reserve to grow at least another 200%. We need to be more comfortably around 15, 20 million would be barely 3 months of operating expenses for the city. So although we continue to grow, we have a ways to go, but we're doing very well. And I say kudos to you.
Yep. Yeah, I think I hit two at one time. So this slide is everybody's favorite slide. So what this says is our current assessed value came in at $5.7 billion. We made a note at the bottom that last year's assessed value was $5.4 billion. So the current tax rate, we're recommending at 7.9. If the commission wanted to lower the tax rate to a rate that would generate the same number of dollars as the current year budget, you would set the millage at 7.4709, which is what the state considers a rollback rate. So anytime your values increase, this slide is going to say that you need to reduce your millage to get to your rollback rate. So this just gives you a illustration that if the commission so desired to reach the rollback rate, based on the budget that's submitted in front of you, when you follow this column down, we would need to either reduce expenses by $1.5 million or increase revenue projections $1.5 million. What this table then tells you is that when we get closer to the budget adoption, the city will need to have an advertisement done in the newspaper referencing this rollback rate. And that ad will have to state, according to statute, that the proposed millage rate is 7.9, the actual tax increase is 5.74% per the state trim calculations of the rollback of 7.4709. We do it every year, nothing abnormal. This note is just that during this workshop period of these 3 days, we'll ask you to adopt a proposed millage rate, whatever that may be, hoping 7.9. This is a slide that is starting to be, I think, less useful, but anyway, it's still here. We updated it one last time. These are the taxpayers that are paying less than $200 in ad valorem taxes based on their values and exemptions on their properties. So in 2017, it's 18.6%, or 5,700 parcels. You see that went down a little bit from the last year, 2016. Reasons for that are going to be either properties that have been held onto are starting to resell, and once they resell, they get reset as far as their assessed value, or people have lost their homestead for whatever reason, you know, so that's what happens to those.
Tim, so the $0 in taxes paid, is that nonprofits that own property here?
It could be a number of things. It could be, no, we have actually properties that don't pay any taxes.
That are residences?
Yeah, if you have condos that were assessed, I would say condos, if you have properties that were assessed back in a number of years ago, and they were assessed very low, and they've been homesteaded for a number of years, their values are capped as far as what they can go up, and they get a $50,000 homestead.
Tim, how many nonprofits do we have in the city not paying taxes?
I have no idea, Commissioner. We'd have to check it and let you know. Yeah, we can have Hannah look at it, and we'll get it back to you.
Thank you.
So these next two slides just give you, based on what values are doing in the city on average, under the homestead Save Our Homes rule, your taxable assessed value either goes up 3% each year or the CPI, whichever is lower. So the county is using 2.1% this year as a CPI. So what you see here is that if you have a house that's assessed at 150, house or condo, in the current year, that would go up 2.1%, which would be 153,000. You get your 50,000 homestead. When you apply the millage rate, what that does is your annual property tax would go from $790 to $815, or a $24.89 increase. If you have a $500,000 property, it would go up 2.1% to $510. Your homestead exemption, your tax rate 7.9. Your annual property tax would raise from $3,555 to $3,638, or an increase of $82.95 for a year. The next slide is going to be non-homesteaded properties and commercial. They do not have the luxury of the homestead exemption or the Save Our Homes cap. So on this slide, what we do is we use the average increase of 6.5%. Again, some properties will go up more, some properties will go up less. So here, if you look at a property that was 150,000, 6.5%, it goes up to 159. Their annual property tax goes from $1,185 to $1,262, or $77 a year. If you have a property that's valued at $1 million, which could be an apartment complex or a quad or any business, it would go up to $1,065,000. Their annual property tax would go from $7,900 to $8,414, or $513 a year. Let me do it again. This is a summary of all the funds that we'll be asking you to adopt a budget for during the month of September when they come to you as far as adopting a budget. Remember, this workshop period, you adopt a preliminary rate reso for your millage, and your fire assessment budget adoption is done in the month of September. So here's your general fund at $91.1 million, your enterprise funds of water and sewer, solid waste, and golf course, your internal service funds of fleet maintenance, materials and distribution, which formerly was called warehouse, self-insurance, a number of special revenue funds that come in, traffic safety, public art, capital improvement projects, which are Park and Rec Trust, the general government capital, and the utility capital, and then our debt service, which totaled the $221 million that we referenced in the beginning. And with that, we'll be glad to answer any questions that the commission may have.
I have another one. In regards to Town Square project, will we be collecting money for public arts from this city?
Yes.
Give me an estimate of how much will we be collecting?
400 and, what was about 480,000, Debbie, was that the total for all the buildings? About
480 for the public buildings.
480.
City Hall, Library, Police, Fire.
Thank you.
Tim, as we all notice, question on the ballot this year about the increasing the homestead exemption, another 25,000. What kind of effect would that have on this particular budget? And where I believe you told me it was like $2 million or
Right.
something to that.
The impact, if that measure passes, my understanding, the impact will not happen in 18-19 fiscal year. It'll happen in 19-20. So it'll be the next budget that we'll be working on. The latest estimate that we received from the property appraiser's office was that the city of Boynton Beach would realize a reduction in our property taxes of $1.6 million.
That's this year, if that was to happen. Or is that 2 years down?
Yeah.
Okay.
2 years out. Sorry about that. Yeah.
All right. Any further questions from the commission? Seeing none, I'm going to open up to public comments. Individual speakers will have 3 minutes to ask any questions regarding the budget overview, and if they would like to have any questions for a specific department, please state them now. And please state your name and address for the record.
I think I know the system, but thank you. Susan Oyer, 140 Southeast 27th Way. Where do code fees show up in the budget?
On the revenue side, there's we have a line for code violations.
Okay.
Um,
What page was that? Because maybe I missed it.
Susan, do you mind asking all of your questions?
Oh, no problem.
And then we'll write them down and answer them as soon as we can.
No problem, thank you. I'm questioning, are we going to find out how much money is being spent in each of the districts separately for fire and police? No? Is there no breakdown?
From code or from operating overall?
From operating overall?
That'd be almost impossible to be able to do that,
Okay.
honestly.
No problem. What's this, I see that there's, we're spending 1.7 million on the golf course. I assume with golf courses closing all over the county, our city golf course is going to get busier. So does that mean we're going to see an increase in the costs? Because we will be having more people using our golf course, especially with Cypress Creek shutting down. I'm supposed to ask all my questions. What's the status on the take-home cars? How is the fire and police pensions being addressed? I mean, I'm a teacher, I get the whole pension thing. I'm a public employee too, but I also know that those numbers are very large and growing, and I thought we had a separate group that was addressing all of this, and I don't ever see anything come from that, so I was just kind of curious. I see there's on page 10, there's 11% marketing increase. What are we spending that 11% extra on for marketing? I see that there's a 28.9% increase on emergency management on page 10. Let's see, on page 17, are we going to be doing anything about the low-tax taxpayers, the people who pay nothing? Because I know this came up last year, or maybe the year before, and I was a total advocate of at least they should have to pay something so they have some skin in the game, and I know it was discussed. Are we going to discuss that again, especially if this proposed tax amendment goes through and that we take a big hit on our revenue sources? And on page 18, I wish this was me, but we have a lot of people who pay an awful lot of taxes because they live in very nice big houses out on the Intracoastal, and what are they getting for their tax dollars? I mean, are they getting more police response because they're paying a significantly large amount of the taxes for the city? I know there's house parties and all kinds of stuff going on, and I know, Commissioner McCray, this is your district, but, you know, what's being done to help them? Because I know there's a lot of boating problems, and there's a lot of house parties from the Airbnb rent-out situation, and I hope they're getting some bang for their tax dollar buck.
Thank you.
Do they get answered later, or do I stay up here, or what's your procedure?
So we're going to have you stay up there, and we have the questions written down. And
Well, I think, yeah, I wrote most of them down. Several of them will be answered when the departments do their presentations on the
Okay.
golf course, emergency management.
Okay.
You can ask in the marketing and so forth. That'll probably be easier to do that way.
Yeah, no problem. I'll be here.
Pension, right now where we are, we've hired a consultant to take a look at our plans and do an analysis of kind of how we sit compared to other plans throughout the state for similar sized communities. We've received a preliminary report. Tim and I are now going through and taking a look at a variety of scenarios that we want to ask the actuary to run to determine fiscal impact or savings on the plan. So right now we are due to provide that information back. It's probably 6 to 8 weeks away for the actuarial work at least. And then at that point, I'll have enough information to come talk to the commission and see what we want to do moving forward.
Oh, no problem. Thank
That's where we
you.
are. It's like moving the Titanic. I think you know
Yes,
that.
I know.
Yeah, it's slow. It's slow.
And on
anything
your,
regarding
I'm sorry, on your
the
code
take-
violation, If you look on page 4-5, there's a line that's called code violations.
Okay.
Just look under there.
I must have missed that, thank you.
What the status of the take-home cars are you
Yeah.
looking for?
I'm just curious, how many do we have? And are they still being used, and is there some better option? Or is that consistent with other cities?
They're being used for public safety, for police and fire. The non-public safety ones, that number has reduced to 2 or 3, I believe. From what, I think we had 10 maybe a couple years ago of the non-public safety. And I think we're down to like 2 or 3 as people are leaving, or as it warrants, we're taking them away and switching them over to just having access to a city car during the day.
Well, that's appropriate and makes sense, thank you.
Tim, stay there. The 3 non-emergencies, who has cars going home? I need to know.
I'd have to look and find out, as far as names. I think your question on the low taxpayers, that's an interesting discussion. The only method that I'm aware of to hit or have every property owner pay is it has to be an assessment on their property taxes. Millage rate is based on value. That's the structure of our property tax system in Florida. Assessments are not based on value. It's based on dollar amount. There are only certain things you can do an assessment for. So you're limited with that as far as I understand. It's mainly you can do it for, and I could miss a category, so you can, some cities have done it for garbage, some cities have done it for stormwater, some cities we've done it for fire assessment. Some cities have done it for if they have a paving district.
Tim, I'm going to have to interrupt you. This is a little bit off topic regarding the budget. If we want to have a discussion about this by the commission on a future agenda in the public meeting or on a regular scheduled meeting, we can talk about the low tax taxpayers. And as for the high tax taxpayers, the house parties, if they don't get their business tax receipt and let the city know that they are renting it out and paying the tourist development tax, then we don't necessarily know that that's what they're doing and they're violating Florida law. As for the boating, I know that we're working with certain organizations like Inca and Boynton Cares to help do our best to clean up the trash along the Intracoastal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But let me answer this. But in regards to saying what do they get extra, what do they get more, paying more taxes, I'm just saying, I don't think that we can go out and just say, we give them more police protection. That's being discriminatory.
It is. But it seems like they call and no one comes out, because that's what I hear.
Yeah, but they go, trust me, they go.
Okay.
This is my district, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner McRae. Thank you.
Tim, if I might add, I would really like to get a number of nonprofits not paying taxes, and have anybody, I'm sure you have, it's called the pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. Have we ever talked about that, or asking these people who are entities that don't pay taxes if they'd be willing to step up to the plate in some form of payment or not?
I know the Palm Beach County Housing Authority is supposed to be paying us through a pilot program with the county.
Yeah.
If we could find out how much money we get.
It's only about $4,000 a year.
Okay.
We have one other arrangement with Clipper Cove that.
I think the most important thing is to find out how many we have in our city limits that
We'll
are
check.
not paying taxes.
We'll check on that.
And then maybe come up with some kind of an idea or program.
We'll have your report here shortly.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Minister Bernard Wright, 713 Northwest 2nd Street. I have just a couple of questions regarding the special events. City of over $250,000, $251,000 for special events. I want to know, is this the right timing to talk about the Robbie Wells Fest becoming a part of that budget that you all suggested when we were seeking money last year, which would be our 5th year and 5th anniversary of this historic event. This is a Boynton issue, so I was thinking it shouldn't be difficult in getting into that budget, being that it is historic and it's a Boynton issue. Is this the right timing to be considered in that respect?
Yeah, this would be the right time because it's budget and
Since
we
it's
need
200,
to
yes.
allocate it. Currently, everything's budgeted out, so we'd have to take the money from somewhere else. But please, go ahead.
Yes, okay. One other thing, where would we get money for speed bumps? I brought it up a few years ago, how serious a grave issue is speed bumps, especially around that west walking area in Boynton Beach at Ponciana. And down in the area coming from Commissioner McCray House in that area, down 4th Street, right there between 11th and 12th. They race cars like bat out of hell, and fortunately, by the grace of God, there have been no fatalities up to this point. But something really needs to be done in respect. I think most areas now have speed bumps. I've seen that it doesn't cost that much for them, but can y'all consider putting it in, getting out that budget somewhere to try to get some speed bumps in certain strategic areas there? I can meet with someone in that respect.
In order for that to happen, we would have to do a study first and be part of our capital improvement plan when we do street maintenance.
Okay.
So, but, you definitely let us know more about this so that we can see if a study is warranted. So you're saying 4th Street and then between 10th and 11th?
Yes, there's a throughway down 11th, coming all the way from 3rd Street, 4th, all the way back to that park back there, the Boynton Park. Yeah, that's a through, and it needs some speed bumps in that, somewhere in that area. I mean, we should kind of point them out to you at a convenient time. But that and that Robert E. Wells Fest, that's what I'm concerned about tonight in that respect. And so, because we've been scrapping up money, man.
In regards to speed bumps, I'm just saying perhaps when we do the study, we will get with the fire department and the police department, because every time we go out and start talking about speed bumps, they said it has to do with emergency vehicles. So in that study, they will bring that in mind and say, if there evidence warrants that. Okay, we haven't requested it, but I'm just saying due to emergency vehicles, that's why we haven't been getting it, but we feel it.
Okay, in that respect, all right.
And as for the Robert E. Wells Day, special events is the first year that we're doing it separately, and my position is that we're starting with the 3, and maybe in the future years it's something that we could add. But as of right now, we have the balanced budget, and I think what we can do is use. I will be happy to use my community support funds to help. You see that.
That's what we've been using for the last 3 years, and if you notice, this year we were asking for a couple of bands that were costing about $5,000. I sought to get about $10,000, making y'all aware of this. And after my man Mike had told me that it was a good thing to do. When I talked about 10 grand, y'all seen the jump, man, like out of y'all shoes about that. But y'all spending like $30,000 without an attendance every year with this Unity Fest. You know what I mean? How y'all consolidated the MLK with the Unity Fest, I don't know, but I know it's cost effective. I can understand that. But what it does is it keeps people who would probably have 2 days off a year for 2 major festivities, where you cut us down to 1. I don't think you would want to take July 4th and Memorial Day and Veterans Day and put them all together, would you? I mean, people like those days off and like having somewhere to go together. You know what I mean? So, y'all, I don't know where this Unity Fest come in at. But this Boynton, this Robert E. Wells Fest is a historic thing. It's something that's foundational. And you all are not really giving that any serious attention. Y'all not addressing it as serious as you should. I mean, to God be the glory. The man who really started this town on the first street.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Do you have any further questions?
No, aside from going to your personal affairs, coming off the dais, let's see if we can find some money.
That's it.
I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much. Does anyone else like to come up to public comments? Seeing none, public comments is now closed, and we're moving on to administrative departments. Do we want, Lori, how many administrative?
Why don't we put the slide back up that shows the departmental increases and decreases?
I think,
We'll put that up and you all take a look, and if there's You know, tell me, like
Okay.
from HR, the city
Okay, I-
clerk, if you want us to go through in detail, or
So,
if there's only certain departments you're interested in.
I'd actually, if we put administrative departments as the last one, I think the police department, fire, development, public works, and recreation, in that order. Is that okay with the commission? All right, so we'll put administrative departments at the end and start with police.
Now, since our new police chief has been on the job for 5 business days, I didn't fully expect him to have to present the budget in total detail. So he has a backup team. Matt Zeller, Captain Matt Zeller, and I know the assistant chiefs are here that all worked on preparing this budget to assist Chief Gregory.
No pressure at all.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to Boynton. No.
I hear this is becoming a tradition with new employees. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present the proposed police budget for 2018-19. I just want to start off by giving recognition where recognition is due. Assistant Chief Harris, Assistant Chief DeGiulio, and Assistant Chief Snow worked diligently with Captain Zeller to prepare this, and I think they've done a very good job at identifying the needs for the department in the next upcoming fiscal year. As we start with the opening slide, we'll see the quick comparison of the current fiscal year to next fiscal year. Is the mic proposed? You can't hear me? Okay. This current fiscal year to next fiscal year, 2018-19, you see that there is approximately a $688,000 increase between the 2 years. Looking at the breakdown of how that's sliced up in the budget, you'll see that we've maintained 56% distribution in uniform services, so there's no changes there. There's a minor change between support services being increased, and internally we're having administrative services decrease. That's basically a transfer of some responsibilities in our crime prevention area you'll see a little bit later from admin to support. Next slide. For Uniform Services Division, you'll see a pay increase. These are covered in that in the budget for approximately $291,000. There's an increase in our fleet spending of $51,000, and for a net increase of $325,000 overall in the Uniform Services Division, representing roughly a 1.9% increase overall. That's divided up with salaries and benefits representing almost 87% of Uniform Services Division. Next slide. The administrative services, we also account for the bargaining agreement increases there. There's a transfer of personnel that I alluded to earlier, going from admin into support services. Those specific area resources are crime prevention, 2 officers and a sergeant, their salaries, benefits, and then the budget transfers of $20,000. Overall, that's a net decrease in administrative services of $259,545. Since it's such a small division, you see there's only about 76% of that is represented by salaries. Next slide. In the support services division, we again count for the increase in collective bargaining contracts. There's a net increase overall of $622,892, which includes the personnel that were transferred from administration that I mentioned earlier. So we had a decrease in administration, and those people transferred to support services, representing that increase there. In addition to that,
We're going to have him sit down because I'm picking up his microphone.
okay, so certainly want to make sure I'm recording. I was saying, lastly, we have new personnel accounted for in this budget as well, representing approximately $133,944. That is the records manager and the police digital public records specialist position. If I bring the gain down on the mixer would help. Test 1, a little better, still humming. Test 1, 2, 3. 3. Is that better? Everyone good?
Go ahead.
Okay. Next slide. In summary, as I mentioned, we're looking at an overall 2.3% increase in the police department budget from last year, which is $688,000 in cash. That's includes the approximately $400,000 worth of contractual obligations that we are accounting for, and the $133,944 for the new records manager position and body camera administration positions. That's the last slide.
The new personnel that are being added, does that help to fix the situation that we've had where we've had road patrol officers going overtime because they don't have the ability to get back up or get coverage? So is this starting to help fix that issue that we've had for some time?
Not directly. These are positions that will influence our records staffing and oversight, which are involving uniformed personnel, but not patrol officers. There's a police supervisor, a sergeant, that's currently overseeing the records function. So having being able to civilianize that role will allow us to reassign that police sergeant position elsewhere. And then the digital records management person to deal with the body camera administration of those videos. Those tasks are distributed across other sworn personnel in the admin area that are of command staff, so they wouldn't go back to the road either, but that will release up their time to focus on their responsibilities, because as you can imagine, as we continue down the road of the body worn camera program, there will only be more videos, there'll be only more requests for those videos, which will require redaction on a higher level every year.
Okay, that being said, how do we move forward in the future with trying to fix that issue that we have currently?
We're taking a deep dive into that right now. I've had at least 2 briefings from senior command on proposals to look at schedule changes, which we believe that will have a big impact on realigning the right distribution of officers at the right time for patrol by changing the hours of the way the schedule works. So we're reviewing that and discussing it currently. We also, to help stop the bleeding and the issues with patrol, or at least mitigate them to a certain extent, we're also rotating our investigative personnel into patrol time slots. And that is right now in place, and it is currently allowing us to reduce the burden on the regular patrol officers who are incurring all that extra overtime and those extra hours.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
How many uniform officers is the department supposed to have or allowed to have?
156 positions.
156 badges on the street, or potentially on the street,
Sworn
or
personnel.
administrative? Okay.
Sworn personnel.
Sworn personnel. How many do we have?
We're currently looking at approximately 10 vacancies.
10 vacancies. I understand you just had like a job fair just recently, was well attended,
Yes,
potential.
we had a very successful combine this past Saturday. We had 75 pre-qualified candidates come out and participate, or scheduled to come out and participate. So
My question to you, you might, or even the captain, is that we just recently hired 7 new hires. Why wasn't the request put in for 17 new officers and only 7 instead of only 7? Why wouldn't we want to have a full complement of sworn officers? Which would eliminate a lot of the issues that the Commissioner, Vice Mayor has just brought up as far as overtime and such.
Well, if I can just help you out, Chief, one of the things, I don't think at any one point we've had 17 vacancies at one time. I mean, people kind of come and go or leave at different times. So, and Matt maybe, or Assistant Chief DeGiulio could probably speak a little better to it in terms of, we didn't hire 17 because I don't think at the time we had 17 vacancies necessarily.
At the
That
time we hired the
fluctuates.
7 officers, how many vacancies do we have? How's that?
Yeah, I think then maybe we could ask, is Joe here? Yeah.
That's all our captain.
It changes daily, so it's difficult.
I'm going to give it a shot to handle that question. Generally speaking, for the last probably 2 years, 3 years, we've been floating anywhere between 8 to 9 officers short between officers that did separate, went to other agencies, those who have retired. So we're never necessarily short 10, 12, 14 officers. We've been generally short roughly 7, 8. I took over training and standards in 2015. We're 8 officers short. And for the most part, our hiring our hiring goals have always been 8 because that's how many we've been short. Through the processing, by the time we hire people, other people have left. Sometimes it's not anticipated. When people go to other agencies, we don't necessarily know. So for the most part, the group of 7 we did hire at the time when we were looking at the 7 or 8 people, when we do put people in background, we don't necessarily anticipate people also being disqualified as well. So when in the beginning, when Captain Zeller was processing, we were probably about 6 or 7 short. Through terminations, retirements, and other officers just recently leaving, our numbers have increased up to a little bit higher.
Don't you anticipate retirements of people leaving, or is obviously...
We anticipate
drop dates and
retirements.
such?
Yeah, we anticipate retirements, but when officers leave to other departments, we don't necessarily know that, especially when it's not in the necessary range of their average retirement. We've had a few officers just recently leave that was kind of unsurprising. We weren't prepared for that.
All right, so what you're telling me, we hired these 7 officers, there were 7 openings. That's what you tell me. In the interim, 10 more openings.
Currently, we are anticipating, I think at this point, we are 7 officers short. We do have vacancies as captains and a sergeant. But for officers' perspectives, we have 7 officers short, total of 10 vacancies. But we have 2 captains and 1 sergeant. A total of 10, but 7 of them being officers, currently speaking.
Do you anticipate the Sheriff's Department taking any of our sworn officers with them? There's talk on the street, and there's only talk?
There's always talk on the street.
Right. Do you have any knowledge of that?
I don't have any knowledge. There's always talk on the street. One of the reasons for the Combine was that we would have a good stable of prospective candidates ready to go. And I think just over the weekend we had a successful event where we had at least 18 to 20 strong candidates. And we also have another 250 applicants ready to go for another Combine. So by being proactive and trying to get ahead of it, we believe that we're in a good position to have more candidates ready to go.
There'll never be a shortage of applicants. It's to get the good ones.
There'll never be a shortage, no.
That's the issue.
Right.
My issue is coming from a public safety point of view here, is that the ask, okay? When I say the ask, going to the city manager, okay, and asking to fill those positions. I know it plays havoc on budgets, but I don't want to see the fire and police departments be running short just because of a budget issue. If we need to do whatever we need to do to get our men and women up to a full complement, I'm willing to sit here and do it. And I think most of my fellow commissioners would go along with that. So it's a very important issue with me to have full complements of men and women to where we need them the most. So in anticipation, we just hired 7. Now I'm thinking that the department's at full complement, and as the good chief just mentioned to me, he says, well, we don't anticipate, since we've hired them, there's been 10 new openings. So it's an ongoing thing. So my question to you then, Chief, would be that you're probably already in the process of getting another class established along taking some of the applicants, these applicants that we just were explained to me this last job fair. Is that correct?
By the question, you're saying that there was another class?
Is there another class coming on? Yes.
Well, the folks that we just sworn in at the last meeting last week will go into field training and orientation. Orientation and field training, roughly another, what did we say, that was 5 months, 6 months? About 6 months or so worth of internal in-house training for them before they'll be realized on the road as independently operating sworn officers. The group that we just processed in the Combine, they'll move into a background investigation, and if successful, hired. Some of those folks already have certifications. They can go into the FTO and training and orientation programs. The ones that do not would go into the police academy. So we're going down both angles to find the best and brightest to bring on board as quickly as possible.
Okay, so it's an ongoing thing to keep these positions filled.
Continuous.
Is it typical hiring, was it like, Julie, 4 to 6 months to bring an officer on board by the time you do all the backgrounds and everything? It takes a while. I know that's one of the struggles. 3 months, 4 months?
Matt Zeller, Captain Wayne Beach. I just want to add, Commissioner, we identified about 18 individuals that we are going to conditional offer. We work very closely with HR, and with their permission, we're allowed to condition twice as much as what our current openings are, so we can anticipate those individuals that don't make it through the background process. So we know that if these 7 pass or these 10 pass, we're in good shape, but we also have another 8 in case one of those fell up. We have someone that's already in the works within the background process, so we're anticipating that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McCray?
Thank you. Chief, I have this question. in regards to visiting City Hall several times, but then, week, 2 or 3 times, often see citizens come out saying that they are disgruntled because they said, I did not get my police report. What is a fair turnaround time for somebody to come and say, I'm requesting a police report, and how long will it take for them to get that report?
With the current processes in place with the current records management system and supervisor approval, it's about 7 days to get that police report.
7 days, even for a hit and run, it's 7 days.
Depending on the accident, if it has been approved by the supervisor and the officer and there's no redactions that need to be made, there's also information that we're waiting to come back from my experience in traffic. One of the biggest things I'd like to just pinpoint on the accidents, if they are not involved in the accident, then that report is not available for 6 months. So if they're not directly involved, it is protected by law, so they can't have ambulance chasers and other attorneys trying to grab.
All right, let me ask it another way. I'm just saying in regards to elected officials, when somebody come to us and say, I'm trying to get a report from the police department, what the hell is the problem? What's our recourse? Where do we go then? Tell me that.
I'll be more than happy to help them if you provide me their information.
Your name again?
Captain Zeller.
Thank you.
I'll make myself available.
That's
yes,
good.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you.
I'm always the one to really be pretty heavy with my praise, so I just do want to take a second to thank Assistant Chief DiGiulio for his work and his brainchild of creating that Combine program. Again, I love the fact that he said we were being preemptive. We were thinking ahead instead of trying to be reactive. I think that's what makes our city just so great, and we're moving in a positive direction. And I also thank our police department for doing those things and trying to move us in a positive direction. So I look forward to these new recruits and these new candidates that will come out of this program. And it not only says who we are as a police department, but we put ourselves above the rest in terms of we're recruiting minorities, we're recruiting individuals that perhaps wouldn't have sought public service or a position as a police officer, but the fact that we have these types of programs, they're giving it a second thought. So being a police officer nowadays is not easy, but having programs like that makes it something that people want to actually look at and consider as a profession. So thank you, Assistant Chief, and the other command staff individuals for working on this program.
I have one final comment in regards to the police department. As you're swearing in, we had some citizens were sitting in the audience, and when the minorities were sworn in, they asked me today, where the hell do they keep them at? They said, we had no idea we had that many minorities. I'm just saying, you all need to toot your horn more. I'm just saying, you're doing a great job, but if you don't publicize it, I can't do it for you.
All right. Boynton. I had a question, because I know that we're we're having a new police station. Is that new police station going to have a 24-hour, 7 days a week, 24-hour lobby where people can come in, drop off medications that are no longer needed, or have a safe space to deal with, offer up?
Yes, that is the plan.
Okay. Is that going to be at the police station, or is that going to be at the annex?
At the police station.
Yeah. During the temporary move, we won't have that, because we're going to be moving records across the street from City Hall, that space behind the post office. We're renting that space to provide customer service and a small records crew for folks that come into the lobby. That's where most of our foot traffic is.
Yeah.
So that will not be 24/7. And when the new station's open, we plan on doing that again.
Is that going to be open 7 days a week?
I don't know. We could
The
talk about it. I
warehouse?
don't know. Is it? We do it now. I mean, it's.
Right.
Okay.
As far as
See why we
police,
can't.
there'll also be a call box at the annex building where the
Is it
records
open
will be there,
24 now?
and they'll be able to call the dispatch
It is.
if they're on
It's on.
site 24/7.
Okay, so there will be a place, let's just say if someone needs a safe place to go in the city of Boynton Beach, they could go to that place and hit the call box.
Yes.
Yeah, and you
Okay.
can too for fire. I mean, in terms of if it's an emergency, you go knock on there's a call box outside the fire station, Fire 5's door as well, or all stations, I think, for that matter,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, just one more quick question. On our Marine unit that we got stationed down here at the Marina, do we have certain hours of operation? How is that manned, and what is our cost to operate that? And is there any redundancy with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Intercoastal Patrol?
Marine unit?
Oh, come on down.
Staffing
Frank.
schedule?
Come on down. Yeah, come on down, without going right.
I'm not for,
There you go.
Schedule of when they're working in the Marine unit and as well as the operating costs.
oh, the Marine unit currently is working Wednesdays through Saturdays from 7 to 5 p.m.
Okay.
And they currently work under the Uniform Services budget, so they don't necessarily have a separate operating budget, but Captain Zeller are probably better when it comes to the budget, specifically about their operating costs.
We can do that tonight, you can provide it tomorrow, instead of trying to, unless you have it handy, but I don't think you do.
Majority of the costs that are associated with the Marine unit are covered by a Manatee grant. That covers fuel, maintenance. We've only spent approximately $10,000 annually on the fuel costs while the Manatee grant is not in session.
Does the Sheriff's Department have a similar operation that patrols the same waters, or are we strictly responsible for our intercoastal?
They work concurrent, similar to any other local agency next to us for police services, but they do work together throughout the week.
Throughout the week.
There's some overlap in the Intracoastal with the multiple agencies. For the most part, any agency that has jurisdiction on the Intracoastal waterways is also blue lighting certified and has jurisdiction throughout the multiple jurisdictions throughout the county, so they can share responsibilities.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fix that microphone since you know what to do.
All right, and so I guess now we're moving on to fire, where we could talk about emergency management as when you're talking about emergency management, please let us know.
Glenn Joseph, Boynton Beach Fire Department. Evening, everyone, commissioners. We have a budget to present. Quite a small increase of 2.4% overall. Most of it's in personnel services and other operating expenses. We do see some increase in non-operating expenses for the upcoming fiscal year, and that's for a records management system to augment our current capabilities and improve efficiency throughout the department. We saw that in 17-18, actually, yeah, 17 we included community standards to our budget, so that provided an increase from year to year. But this year's increase is small, minuscule even, 2.4%. Next slide, please. What do we got? Remote. Okay, thank you. This one? Oh, I think we went too far. Yeah, so our revenues, you know the standard revenue sources that we've had in the past. Briny Breezes, Ocean Ridge, we provide services for them. Town of Hypoluxo, a 4% increase on all those contracts annually. I'd like to focus in on the ambulance transport fees. You can see from 2015 to 2016-17, we saw a slight increase in the fees. And from the time we put the 6 firefighters on board in 2016, they actually went in service in the early part of 2017. We saw a significant increase in the amount of revenue, 17-18, from $2,665,000 to $2.8 million. We promised you a $300,000 increase, and I think we did a little bit better than that. We're estimating 3.2 for 18-19, primarily because we're going to improve efficiencies in reporting and increase the number of reports for the entire year. The PEMT fees is a supplemental fee system that the federal government put in place through the state that allows us to recoup some of our costs for transporting Medicare and Medicaid patients. It first came in place in Florida in 16-17, and we've estimated in 17-18 $147,000. This is found money. It doesn't cost us anything except for making a report to the state, and they send us a check around the second quarter, beginning of the second quarter, for $147,000. Fire and life safety, we made some changes there as well. As you're aware, over the summer, we've changed the ordinances and changed the fee schedule. So we're anticipating a slight bump in the amount of fees coming in the next 18-19. So overall, we're estimating an increase in revenue about 9.2% between 17-18 and 18-19. So I do this right. So. Oh, look at that. Other sources of income. We've been aggressively pursuing grants over the last year. The city manager has been very emphatic about getting additional funding. So we answered the call. Palm Beach County Division of Emergency Management, we got a grant for $7,200. That was done by Assistant Chief Mike Landris. Firehouse Subs gave us a grant for $7,584. We used that money to purchase a fire extinguisher simulator to teach fire extinguishing to the communities and to homeowners associations, et cetera, and so on. And that grant was put in by Fire Marshal Kathy Klein. We have a new grant that's pending. We have every hope of getting that grant for $25,000 to offset the cost of Narcan for our opioid epidemic, and that's been put in by Assistant Chief Mike Landris. So we think we'll get that grant also. And the big daddy is the Assistance to Firefighting Grant, AFG, from FEMA, which was put in by Deputy Chief Jeff Davidson for $90,124 to offset the cost of some safety equipment and to another equipment to remove the diesel fumes from the stations. So that's going to go towards safety equipment from FEMA.
And that's a very competitive grant. We've sought after AFG funds for a few years, and this is the first year we're getting it. We just received the award a few days ago, so we wanted to share the good news tonight for you.
The other thing is that we won this grant in round one, which is the only one in Palm Beach County to get a grant in round one for AFG. So that's good stuff. That's good stuff from Jeff Davidson. Other donations, we get a lot of donations from other civic. High Ridge Country Club gave us a grant for $14,000 last year. It helped us purchase the watercraft rescue.
Is it a different slide? No. Okay.
And we got some grants from a lot of the communities out and about, gives us additional monies. The League of VRG gave us about $1,000 a year. Hunters Run about $3,500. Gateway Church, we need to mention them because they helped offset the cost for the Youth Academy we did in the spring, and they basically allowed us to provide that service to the kids at no cost to the children. And they gave us almost $1,000 to make that happen. So Briny Breeze's Bazaar gives us money every year, and we appreciate that. Just wanted to make sure that they're mentioned. Inside our numbers, total calls for 2017 was 15,468. As you've seen, we have had an 8% increase in calls for the last 3 years running, and we expect that to continue into 2018-19. Year to date, we've done about 6,000 calls, so we're on track to actually either equal the 15 or increase. Average per month is about 1,200 calls per month, about 40 calls per day. Those include all calls, fire and EMS. EMS calls in 17 were about 12,000. Out of that, we transported somewhere around 10,000 of transports. Our paramedics administered in 2017 $19,000 worth of Narcan. That's why I put in for a grant this year to help offset that cost. But through the efforts of the police department and other administration agencies, we've been able to actually reduce the amount of overdoses by almost 50%. So we're making progress. We're not there yet. So far this year, we've spent about 3,000, or roughly 4,000, and we're on pace to spend about almost $10,000 by the end of the year.
Chief, excuse me, I'm going to need to go back to that slide.
Yes, sir.
Okay, in regards to that slide there, I asked the city manager, how was the opioid going here in the city of Boynton, and she said that, you could give her a monthly summary, and I kind of got a little upset with her because I'm like saying that information, it needs to be shared with us because I'm like saying, I didn't know if it was going up.
We share the
going
information
down.
with you every month.
You shared it with the city manager, so she's finally going to share it with us. I'm just saying, yeah, don't worry about that. We had it out. We're doing
Okay.
okay.
Good enough.
Yeah, keep doing your report. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's worthwhile for us.
Thank you very much. This is like a bragging slide here. I hate to brag, but I do. So of all the departments that run upwards of 12,000 or more calls per year, our response time, because the county has an ordinance that requires all EMS responders to get to 90% of their calls within 8 minutes. And we're the only of the large departments running over 10,000 calls a year that meet that standard. Boca Raton's right below us, which is nice to have for a change. And the rest of them are below they don't meet the standard. So when I brag on Boynton and say that Boynton's one of the finest departments in the county, this is just one of the elements that I use to say that we are doing a good job. Based on the call volume, we're getting the job done. And I just
Excuse
wanted
me,
to
when you came from what city?
Well, that's why I'm bragging on it, because it's not often I get to brag on them. So it's, and I didn't compile these myself. I was actually compiled by the chief at Boca Raton. So when he sent it to me, I decided I needed to use that one. So Chief Tom did a good job there. But these are the county numbers that we send to the county every month, and these are as accurate as they get. So we do better than Del Rey, which is also nice to know. That's another story altogether. Anyway, let's move on. Fire and life safety. Like I said, we've been retooling life safety by revising the ordinances and updating them. And these are the numbers we did for 2018 and 17. We expect that we're fully staffed now with a full staff in life safety. We've redone their fee schedules. We're trying to automate a lot of this stuff and give them some records management support in the next coming year. And so we should see an increase in efficiency in that division. Community Standards is going to do a presentation for you down the road, but this is where we are with their complaints. 704 so far this year. We have about 1,400 cases out there being processed. A lot of work. So this is our last slide, and we're doing, again, a little bit more bragging about this. We do a lot of charitable events in the city. In the fishing tournament, and the chili cook-off, which the mayor was one of the judges, and we raised $9,000 for Kiwanis, and Kiwanis uses that money to do the Reading Rainbow. The Reading Oasis, it's called. They put them in middle schools and elementary schools, and they bring books in to encourage children to read more. MDA, we raised $48,000 for them in March. Significant commitment from the firefighters to fill the boot. I'm sure you saw them in the intersections doing that. The golf tournament in 2017 raised $2,000 for the Junior Diabetes Research Fund. In total, we raised almost $60,000 in charitable donations this year. CERT members. We trained nearly 200 members. We did a full-scale drill in lieu of the hurricane. We brought about 50 of the CERT members out, did a full moulage to get them prepared for this year's hurricane season in case we have the big one. We installed 136 car seat installations at the fire stations. Did public CPR classes. The reason why we only trained 37 students this year, which is lower than our usual, is because we trained all the city employees in Stop the Bleed. The city manager earlier last year, after the Las Vegas event, gave us a challenge to become more prepared for Stop the Bleed in case we had a similar tragic event in the city of Boynton Beach. So with the Human Resources Department, Risk Management, and the Fire Department, we put together a program to train all 742 city employees that are not public safety in Stop the Bleed. We also purchased 12 Stop the Bleed kits. We're going to put them in all the city facilities, and each kit can treat about 8 victims of, God forbid, that we have that kind of event in our city. So we started a program last year also called Baby Sleep Safe, where when we ran on medical calls, we assess the environment that newborns are in to see if it's a dangerous environment. And if it's a dangerous environment, we take care of it right away by giving them a sleeping arrangement for the baby. And if it's not perfect, we give them flyers to tell them where to get help, like 211 and Bethesda Medical. And we were able to do some of that this year. If you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to
Is it fair to say we're the only city in the county that did the Stop the Bleed training? You're bragging?
It is absolutely correct that we are the only city that have done, and all the city members, all the city employees.
All 39 cities, we're the only city that has every one of our employees trained.
In fact, they're looking at us, and I brag at this.
You missed that one.
I did. It was a challenge.
It was a challenge.
But HR did, Danny Goodrich did a fantastic job with Julie Olberry to actually coordinate all the scheduling and do all that stuff. We did the training, so we had the trainers and we did that, but they did all the coordination, beat the bushes, harassed and harangued people to actually attend the class, and we got everybody done.
And we will make that available for you. I sent you all an email a month or so ago, but we'd be happy to do the training for you if you're interested, and you can do the CPR and the Stop the Bleed. It takes maybe 4 hours, but it's excellent. I'd encourage you, just from a personal perspective too, in your homes, to know the procedure.
The School Board of Palm Beach County wants to do a similar initiative that they saw our success, and they're engaging the fire departments around the county to try to make that happen. Private businesses are approaching the city to say, hey, can you help us with that? And we're trying to make those programs available to the community in general. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to entertain them.
Chief, if I might, I didn't see the pancake breakfast up there, which I enjoyed going to for many years, and I'd like to say I've been a judge to that chili cook-off for the last 4 years. Also enjoyed that.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
thank you
I'm sorry.
not to make an
last
issue
4
of that,
years
but
was my bad.
With that being said, Chief, the number of sworn personnel that you have, did you say you were up to full complement of men? We have full complement of men and women in our department.
No, we do not. We have a full complement in life safety, which we have 2 vacancies in community standards, and we just filled up life safety, and right now we have 6 vacancies in the fire department.
Did you put any request in this budget to fill those?
These are replacement vacancies, so we're in the process right now of starting a process to hire those people.
Okay, so you're out there actually
They are already
actively
funded.
recruiting?
They are already funded FTEs, so they're fully funded.
Okay, great. On the opioid deal, have you noticed any effect that it might have on the men and women that respond to the numerous calls over the last couple of years? Has there been any effect as far as mental health or emotional breakdowns or whatever?
I can't say that I've noticed any effects directly from the opioid epidemic. The stress level from doing this work, and because of the opioid, the people that are being affected by that epidemic is the same age or the age of their kids. So we've taken some preemptive steps in the last year and a half. We've upgraded our critical incident stress debriefing team. We've brought Chief Davidson has headed up that team. Brought some counselors in to meet with the guys to make sure that if there are any needs, how to recognize the symptoms of stress. And we're now looking at other programs because, with the state's PTSD statute, we want to be proactive. So we're assessing programs right now to not only assess the need on a critical incident, but on an ongoing basis. One of the things we're looking at is a program that Sunrise has, which I think is very impressive, that if they have a certain number of incidents in an established period of time, say they had 4 deaths in a shift or they had a pediatric incident, they would automatically go into counseling. And it's a point system. So we're looking at different mechanisms to not only, one, help people that need help, recognize that when it does happen, but we also want to be proactive by training people with tools to cope with that kind of stress for the long term.
It was good that the state finally realized that is a real issue, post-traumatic stress with firefighters, first responders.
It is an ongoing issue.
It's an ongoing issue, so I'm glad the state is finally recognizing that. Just talking a little bit about your ALS transports, I see, is that a $725,000 increase? Is that what you're saying to this department?
That's what I said.
Okay. How much was that collected? Did we collect $725,000?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right now, and I forgot to mention this too, it's a good thing you brought it up. This collection rate, our collection rate in the city of Boynton Beach is about 80%. And that's 3 driving elements behind that, actually 2 major elements. Number one is the firefighters are doing a better job of documenting because they have the electronic documentation system, so they're allowed to do a better job so we get the reimbursement that we actually deserve. Number 2, we have a couple of rock stars in our EMS billing staff. Misty and Sarah, and they work like a dog on a bone to try to get us every dollar we can out of the people that owe us money. So they're actually collecting 80%, which is unheard of in the county. The next closest department is Boca Raton, they're around 72, 74. And the county just published their numbers, they're around 56, 60, thereabouts. Delray's in the lower 60s. So these guys are rock stars. They're on the phone, they work tirelessly to get the job done, and they're doing an outstanding job.
So our collection rate's about 80%, which is excellent.
About 80%.
Okay. Let me ask you this, if you do know, what is the wear and tear that puts on our apparatus responding, all these transports we're doing, and does it at any time put the stations out of position to respond to real 911 calls?
Well, everybody that calls 911, it's a real call to them. It may be, that they're sick for 2 or 3 days, but to them, that day right now is an emergency. It's their emergency. So we treat everybody with the same level of respect, commitment, dedication that we would anybody else. Now, of course, there's some calls that are more acute than other calls. There's no doubt about it. But to that person in that scene right now, that is their big emergency, and stop the world, help me now. So we don't put a value or a severity rating on the different calls. We treat everybody like it's our grandmother, and that's how we do. And I have many, many letters in my I get from patients that say that your guys treated me like I was their grandmother, and they appreciate that. So does not put them out of pocket for the next call. That's just part of doing business. That's why we have the stations located where they are, so they can cover each other's zone, and we have a fallback. If that station is busy, the next station falls in. Now, also by giving us the extra 6 firefighters you did in 2016, we're fully manned, both the fire apparatus and the rescue, the transport unit. And both of those have paramedics on them. So if the transport unit is out transporting a patient, we could send a fire truck with a paramedic that would actually treat that person right now until the transport agency arrives.
I remember when both trucks went out, we called it a task force.
Well, it's Station 1. We no longer have a task force.
I know you
Station
don't.
1. We don't. And I think it's shown in the numbers that we are doing a much better job on getting the job done in a better way for the community.
Chief, I love you. You guys do a great job.
I love you too.
I'm a big
I love you,
supporter of you guys. Thank you.
Group hug. Yeah. I feel the love. I feel the love. Let me say 2 things. First and foremost, I'd like to give Eleanor a charge. Is she here?
She's here.
So I think the new catchphrase for our BBFD should be #challenge accepted. Yeah, I coined that one. Okay, and then secondly, I want to just really quickly give a shout out to Kathy Klein. I'm not sure if she's here, but this woman single-handedly, if I may be speaking out of turn, but I believe she single-handedly helped to will be helping to bring over nearly $200,000 in savings or in revenue towards our Boynton Beach Fire Department. So again, these are things that we need to make sure that as a public, we commend our personnel who are working hard, who just take initiative and do things to help bring revenue and bring better light to our city. So I don't want to let that go unstated, especially if we're going to be putting out bragging rights here. I want to make sure she gets her bragging rights. So thank you, Kathy, for the work that you're doing, and everyone else who helped her with that.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you.
I have a final question.
Yes, sir.
Please explain to me, why do we, that we have to send out a EMT truck and then a fire truck. Okay, I'm going to say it like this because we had an incident that happened in the cemetery Saturday. Lady fainted. Was able to get the fire, not the fire truck, we got the EMT truck down. The fire truck we had to turn around and send back out the cemetery. Why 2 vehicles? Years ago, we used to didn't do that.
That's a good question, and that's Colin. So here's the thing. Depending on the acuity of the call when the call comes in. When a call comes into 911 in dispatch, all right, the communicators in the PSAP have an algorithm that they follow to try to determine what's the acuity of the call. For instance, if you have a heart attack, that's one level of acuity. If you're in cardiac arrest, is another level of acuity. So if somebody fainted that we don't know whether they were in cardiac arrest or not, we send more people because if you're in cardiac arrest, we're going to need to bring the stretcher, we're going to carry the CPR, the meds, and all that other stuff. So we send more resources. If the resources aren't needed, we cancel them. And that's just the cost of doing business. However, if somebody's, I don't feel well today, or I think I'm having a stroke, we only send 1 unit. So depending on the acuity of the call, based on the triage that dispatch does, is the number of units we send. If we have a motor vehicle accident, we're going to have gasoline spilled, oil on the road. We're going to have to treat the patient. We're going to have to move the cars, control traffic. So we send more people that call. But for I stubbed my toe and it hurts, I'll send 1 unit. Or if the rescue is busy. So if the transport is busy, then we'll send the closest paramedic who may be in the fire truck.
And if I stub my toe, I have no business calling the old EMT. I'm going to the hospital.
But for you today, that's a big emergency, so we'll treat you like it's an emergency.
Treat you like grandpa.
I'm good, let's go.
My question for community standards, I don't know, is if we've had any legal cases so far with the chronic nuisance abatement ordinance. Basically,
I'm not.
I just want to know, is that for, the legal expense for community standards, is that part of the legal fund that we have that goes for all of our departments? What I'm asking is there a specific cost for community standards to make sure they're in compliance with the law? Or is that under our legal fund?
Under legal.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
All right, moving on to development.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a brief presentation for community standards if you're interested or not. If not, we can move on to development.
I can move on.
We're going to move
Okay.
on.
Mike Rumpf.
Good evening. Mike Rumpf, Planning and Zoning Director and Interim Department Director. Tough acts to follow, and I won't try and brag or pretend I'm something I'm not. So real quickly here and simply, in a much simpler budget, we'll learn how to use this first. Okay, next page, Thomas. I think Tim explained at the opening presentation that these changes, which appear significant or not, it's a lot of shifting around internally in the department. We are proposing the creation of a new department or a division within the department to focus on customer service. And that's really what is reflected here with the decrease and increase of payroll and personnel. Next. Some highlighted changes. You'll hear us continue to talk a lot about the new division, which we continue to put some definition to. But this individual, Ms. Brown, who currently heads up our business tax certificate of use function in the billing department, our division will head up that division as well as continually overseeing that application process. Again, indicating that we are proposing to relocate staff internally within the department. Particularly prompted by our move and requirement, or I should say speeding up, I'm sorry, let me back up. We are transitioning to an electronic submittal process. A little bit complexity involved in this to get the computer systems and workflow and everything programmed, which IT is working with us on. But it's well timed with the destruction of our records in connection with relocation out of City Hall and planning for more e-government and less space devoted to records, which we have for the past 30-plus years, which I can personally attest to. We continue to implement electronic aspects of e-government, and we're not fully there yet and hope to in the coming year to be really up and running, particularly in a more energy efficient, time efficient way of reviewing applications electronically. Planning and zoning, we want to be competitive in hiring new staff. One of the things we want to do is have a career path in place where someone can come to the city and see where they can promote with additional time and experience. That's not really affecting our numbers, but our job classifications at this time, you might see in the next or subsequent period slight increase or proposes increases in wages just to account for possible succession and advancement of staff internally if we anticipate the qualified staff to do so. You'll also see a large number being allocated to consulting services. We've oftentimes in the past been asked, are we able to do everything we're expected to do in addition to unexpected assignments and projects? This is intended to cover unanticipated as well as anticipate projects in the coming year with respect to continued implementation of our CRA plan. Those numbers that you see in the budget are essentially estimated review fees in the event that we're able to use our consulting services contract we have to assist day-to-day reviews of applications while staff is allocated to special projects, whether that be a Complete Streets program, again connected to the CRA plan, or other studies. Yeah. Again, we continue to implement electronic operations. Kind of a few list or aspects of those. We boast of housing rehab applications, which are up. We completed the LDR audit, again, in connection with implementing the CRA plan. Challenges, also in connection with our e-permitting, we do continue to work through bugs and complexities in going e-government, particularly with electronic filing of applications, but we will work through it and look forward to doing that this coming year. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just don't want you to go forward and for me to lose my place. But can you tell me increased housing rehab applications? Do you have a number for that?
Yes, I do. Total rehabs and repairs are 13. We do have a small number, but increased 2 up in terms of housing purchase assistance.
Okay. So are we feeling like we're moving in a positive direction with that program?
I'm sorry,
Are we feeling like we're moving in the right direction with that program?
That's a good question. And I know we were prompted to answer the question, are we getting the word out well enough?
Yes.
And that came up as a question before.
Thank you for reading my mind.
It's a new topic to me, but I've already spoken and met with Lachey in the office, Octavia's right arm, and we've already talked about some strategies to better get the word out, and I'm sure we will.
Mike, I must say I am dissatisfied with this program because I feel like this is not the first time we've had this conversation. I feel like I believe it was either last year or the fiscal year before that when Octavia did a presentation before us at the City Commission building. I remember saying something of this effect that the information isn't getting out there. The public doesn't necessarily know that these funds are available, and I feel like we're having a repeat of the same conversation that resources are still not necessarily being employed to let people know that these options are available, these grants are available to help them rehab their homes or to put paint or put roof or AC systems. So what is being done instead of just saying, yes, we're going to change our communication methods? What is actually being done? I'd like to see a plan. I'd like to see something in the effect of fiscal year last year will be different from fiscal year this year. That's what I'd like to see, and I think that that's what will make the difference for this department, because right now this department, to me, seems ineffective for the purpose that they've been recruited to do. It seems ineffective to me. I'm not usually one to put people down, but I tend to like to give praise, but this is one of those parts where I don't really see it being done.
I'm new to this seat. I could answer most questions involving our planning and zoning services, but I took it seriously when that inquiry came to us last time.
Yeah.
I met with both Octavia and Lachey to talk about that, to find out what has been done, and kind of, plant some seeds and prompt them to begin thinking about and implementing things that I'm sure they'd thought about.
Michael,
We've taken a couple steps, so let me interject. I have Eleanor
Okay.
here, because I know from that last discussion, Vice Mayor, we have since done additional design. I know, Eleanor, you worked on flyers that in all 3 different languages to get the word out. We've posted it more predominantly on our website. We've blasted it out through social media. We have to do the normal advertisement in the paper. have we done anything with like flyers and facilities? Yes. To all of our facilities. So we didn't do as much with the flyers as we have before. We designed, Eleanor worked with Octavia to design a couple to try to get the word out on the public notice meeting. But you know, it's,
I guess
other next to like door to door, I don't know how much more we could really do.
I guess-
I think did we work also with the radio station? Did we put something told me we were able to get on a Haitian radio station.
All right. Well, what I'd like is that if we could, talk about this out at the Pirate Fest. I know that we get a big population coming into Boynton Beach that may not be living here, and then also with social media. So when we do have those new flyers, that's something that we can put out on Instagram, Facebook, and
we do that now.
And so
yeah.
I think it's more the sense is that maybe partnering with the CRA to help get out the word when we're having certain events, because unless you come to Boynton Beach and want to come to Boynton Beach, you're not going to want ask for the money. So I think it's to try to target the residents and the people that are renting in Boynton Beach, we should go partner with the CRA. Is that something that you could look into for next year?
Certainly. Of course.
Any new ideas?
Yeah.
Right, and what I would add is,
CDC.
I believe the issue with the current methods of trying to get out to the community is the people perhaps who need the help the most are probably not looking at us on social media. So if we have other outlets of perhaps getting to the pastors of the local churches, I know you have your monthly meeting with the clergy. The clergy, should be aware, and the other members of the pastors who perhaps live in our districts who perhaps don't attend your clergy meetings should also be aware of these different programs. I think that's where we have that gap, and saying that we put it out on social media or putting it at the facilities may not necessarily be the best approach of how to get to these people. And we've noticed that for these past few years, it hasn't necessarily worked to the extent that I would think is something that's something that's commendable. I mean, 13 homes out of 76,000 residents, I think that's a very abysmal number.
And as you run across, we have a database of the churches and the pastors, and that information changes all the time. But if you know through your community people that have them get us, they can get us their contact information, that we can build that database. The flyer does go out to the database we have now, but it doesn't cover the whole city of all the churches. So we're always trying to grow that and keep that up to date. So if you run across any, that please encourage them or give them Eleanor's information for us to get them on our distribution list. And then we email it out. That's the extent we can do.
Let me make a final comment. First of all, we only had 13 that participated in this program, but in order to be fair with this program, let's find out how many people came in and was declined. I'm just saying, look at the overall picture. I'm just saying, we might have had 100 people that came in, and only 13 people was approved. I'm just saying, everybody come in, they don't get approved.
Right.
I'm sorry.
It's
Yeah.
true. Okay, I'll look that up.
As you can see, listed under challenges is just what we talked about. So in addition to us talking about it, we acknowledge that is something we want to strive to improve. So workforce housing, we know that there's probably other or untapped resources and programs and projects that we could probably implement to increase housing provisions. We know that we have goals within our downtown TCA that has commitments to workforce housing. We know we need to strive to meet those, so we know what we need to do, and it's just working toward meeting our goals. Yep. There's questions.
I guess I should just wait for a nice slide.
I just got a quick one. We recently had an issue involving the CRA and the development, and the issues that came up said that the city ended up kicking the can down the road as far as delaying inspections and notes back and forth. Has that been addressed? We have documentation now from the minute that application comes in the door till it leaves, when it was looked at, by who?
for some reason, the acoustics are really poor to me in here. I heard you say the CRA, some inspection issues. This is timing of processing applications.
The timing and process, right, is that all documented, like time-stamped? This is when they were reviewed, this is when they were approved, this is why they weren't approved?
Certainly, yes. Yes, it is. In fact, the electronic system that we continue to implement is going to make that type of information immediately available to contractors, applicants, and the public as well. So if that's where you're going. Also, if you're asking about addressing those problems quicker and dealing with that, I think that's also going to be covered underneath the scope of the customer service division.
All right, so that's going to be addressed, those delays that they occurred.
Sure, and I think one of the intentions of that is to address those issues quicker. So it doesn't have to escalate up to a division head or a director. It can be addressed quicker, increasing. Our hope is that there's internal communications are increased and improved.
My point here is that we set timelines on these developments, and I know we've got a bunch of them in the Town Square project. I would imagine there's certain guidelines and timelines that they have to be. And I don't want these developers coming before us, either a CRA board or a city commission, pointing fingers at the city, saying, well, the city delayed it because. I want to make sure those are all addressed in your system here, that it's streamlined, it's documented, so we can move forward. So it's, the blame doesn't fall on our shoulders.
I think Andrew Mack in the past has been challenged to provide timelines and things like that, and it's found it very easy to extract the information from our system in terms of turnaround times, submittals, comments, types of comments. So no question there.
Okay.
My final question, Mike, I had a business in this district that called me and said that, they was given one set of options and then somebody else reviewed it and said that they couldn't do it. And I'm just saying, I know we have people that's coming in that's not really part-time or not really on our staff. Is anybody saying, let's all look at this together before we go ahead and call this individual and say, you cannot do this? Because I'm just saying, Stephen Shields, I can go ahead and call his name. I'm just saying, he had a problem. And he called me and said, Commissioner, I don't know what to do. When I got through here, and I'm saying, hell, I don't know what to do either, And it involves your department. And I'm just saying, it's like cross. You said, Lori tell me one thing, and then I go to college, he tell me something else. I'm going to believe Lori, but I'm just saying, that was a nice punch,
Well, Mike, I was going to. So, and that's a very good observation, and that has happened over the last year or so. When we bring in contract folks, if we can't get the same folks coming in all the time, we do get some different interpretations in the rules. One of the things the electronic permitting is going to do for us is that it's going to allow these people that are coming in to see everybody else's comments. So you can overlap it and you can see it so you don't make that mistake. And we have made that mistake. You're absolutely right. And it's just different people coming in and looking at it. So electronic permit's going to help. And the other thing is this new division we're creating, which is the ombudsman. So when somebody is having a problem, they can come to a person whose job it is to go to anybody that she needs to go to and fix the problem. So that gets fixed right away. So we don't let it linger and delay projects. So I think the combination of those two things, you're going to see improvements fairly quickly in that area.
Thank you.
Let me add as well, and I'm familiar with the case I think you referred to when I spoke to the gentleman today. Obviously, we want to avoid mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes are made by the information we're given. And then later, more information is collected, and we have to correct the information that was originally provided. People are human. So we want to be able to react quickly and correct mistakes when they do occur. And also, I think we've got a lot of experience in fixing problems. So when whether it's a mistake on our end or their end, we attack it pretty quickly to get to the bottom of it and get a project moving along. And oftentimes making up for lost time. Proud to be able to say that.
Right, Colin just addressed it. He said this new system, they can review. That'll help.
Because they're going to see what the prior reviewer said and need to be on the same page a little bit more.
Yeah, I think we get that in place for good. I'm fine with it.
Thanks, Mike. We neglected to put on the list economic development. Where did David go? Did he step outside? But we have a brief presentation from economic development if you want to hear it. Let me know.
I want to hear because I like to know what he does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Public Works is ready.
Oh,
Yeah, there he is.
heard his name.
Commissioners, Mayor, Vice Mayor.
No, that's Public Works.
There we are. Thank you. Just wanted to, today I'd like to go over the proposed budget for 18-19 for Department of Economic Development. As you see in 17-18, our amended budget was $412,318. For 18-19, we've increased by 13% to $463,625. And later on, you'll see where most of that increase comes from. So we'd like to go forward. Highlighted budget changes, just an overview. Most of that change is the addition of an enterprise grant. We have 2 grants we administer now within the Department of Economic Development. That is for interior build-out and rent reimbursement. So that's a total of $54,000 for those 2 grants. As we have heard from the Commission and from a lot of our business clientele and public, there's a need for support for startups and new businesses. So we have identified approximately $50,000 for startups, specifically for those new businesses and new entrepreneurs that want to start a business, trying to help them grow. And we can talk about that grant a little more if the Commission so desires. A big cost is also an increase in the pension and benefits. The increase in cost for other contractual services is in strategic planning. We've increased from $20,000 to $25,000. This year, as the Commission is aware, we're moving towards having stakeholder meetings as we go through next year's strategic planning process. So there's an additional level of effort required by our strategy for our strategic plan. There's a reduction in printing and binding and marketing. That is really focused on the level of service that we've been able to provide to our businesses. We're still putting together brochures. We're doing mailings, but we found that we probably don't need as much money in this year's budget for that. So we've reduced that number. We also looked at how much we are spending on the residential improvement program. So we've reduced that from $40,000 to $20,000. And if you had any additional questions on that, Mark Woods would be able to address that. And that was based upon the response that he's gotten or he's received over the past year for the use of that program. And I believe that as we evaluate it over the next year, we'll be able to increase that cost again. This is just an overview of the Department of Economic Development and all the things that we are responsible for. We do business development and resources for local businesses. We also work on education and workforce development. We also work with our international trade partners and look for international investment. We partner with the port and others on business attraction. We work with our organizations, partner organizations, like ICMA and others, FCCMA, on legislation and advocacy for businesses. And then we look at infrastructure. What type of support can we provide to businesses, such as incubator space and so on. As you look at the org chart, our 3 focus areas that we focus on in our business strategy, which is the outward-facing part of the organization, working with partners like BDB and others. Then we also do business development, which is our local business approach, providing all of the resources that we can to local businesses for attraction, retention. And then we look at community engagement, because as we talk about our strategy around building wealth in the community, it really is how are we focusing all of the activities that we do to make sure that our residents benefit from the work and the initiatives. And so you see there is what I call, and speak to the city manager about, is our virtual org chart. We do all of those functions with the few people that we have, which is myself and John Durgan. But we also are able to learn what I call cross-functional, because while you see public information, while you see grants management, we also are working with the existing staff, such as Debbie Majors and, of course, Eleanor on those activities. So we don't say we need these necessarily need to fill these positions. These are all of the activities and positions that we partner with others in the organization so that we're able to accomplish the work that we are charged with. Next slide, please. Again, those three areas, focus areas: business strategy, business development, community engagement. These are those roles that I mentioned, working with local governments, institutions of learning, to how do you bring all of the money, resources to the city of Boynton so that the city of Boynton and the businesses here in Boynton benefit. The business development team, as I mentioned, is the local business support. And then the community engagement, which is partnering with community workforce development, fair access to the support for local businesses, environmental justice, and minimize local business displacement. And we also sit on the workforce housing committee for Palm Beach County and representing the city of Boynton on that initiative. These are, again, some of the things that we do. We work on a strategic plan. We're responsible for the business program, the incentive programs, business outreach, marketing, business advocacy, performance management, the economic development plan, which is really just saying that we touch everything with regard to business development, and grant management. Next slide. Underneath each of these activities are those strategies and initiatives that we are working on currently and going forward. Of course, you're aware of the work that we're doing on the strategic plan, and tomorrow evening you'll hear the presentation and the update on where that stands. The business development program, we worked with Tim Howard on a local business preference, and at the direction and the approval of the commission, we are moving forward with that initiative that has been very successful with that. We work with engineering and purchasing on unbundling projects. As you know, larger projects are difficult for small businesses to respond to, so we work with engineering on how do we unbundle some of those projects so local businesses are able to respond. And I mentioned workforce development, which you will see a little later in this presentation, and I'll go into a little more detail on that initiative. Under the incentive program, I mentioned the interior build-out and the rent reimbursement, which are existing programs. We are now working through the two policies and procedures to mirror the CRAs a little more. Our procedures in the interior and processes haven't been updated for years, so we're looking to update those right now. We've added the entrepreneurial program. We don't call it a grant because I'm looking for that to be more of a venture capitalist. So we'll be able to direct that either to an organization that provides funding for small businesses or directly to small businesses that qualify for investment. We want to make sure that we're investing in businesses that have the most success or opportunity for success. And then we talk about the residential improvement grant that we work, although it sits in our budget, it is actually administered by Mark Woods. Business outreach, we are working on one-stop shop, which is we are putting together information now so if any business comes in the door, they know how to do business with the city of Boynton. We are putting together, working with Eleanor on a brochure. We also want to sit down with Mike Rump in development, and as developers come in or businesses come in for conversations around permitting, we want to be able to give them one piece of paper that says, if you want to do business with the city, this is how you actually do business with the city. So we're working on that. Vendor fairs, we're working on several vendor fairs. We want to make sure that the community, business community, understands what's going on within the city, what's coming up, and how to engage. So we're working on that. One specific one that we're working on now is with Sarah Sims Park. We intend to have a vendor fair on the 8th for businesses to understand and see and engage with the work that's going on at Sarah Sim. So hopefully we get more local businesses participating in a local project. Entrepreneurship Week comes up every November. We usually miss that opportunity. We're preparing for that early on, so we'll come up with some program to participate in Entrepreneurship Week. So we've started working that. Some of the conversations that I've had as I talk with a lot of our businesses, both locally and regionally, is that the young professionals aren't engaged at all. They don't understand what we do, how we do it. Startups get into their little bubble. When I say little bubble, their bubble in their circles, and they don't understand how to engage with city government. So we are working on a young professionals group and how to engage that group. Habitat for Humanity has a young professionals group, which we understand. I've attended some of their meetings, although I'm not as young as I used to be. And I know, Mayor, you have a program that you're working with on some of the young professionals. So this is how do we make sure that we pull all those young professionals together. Probably will include networking events, regular networking events, and really talk about, again, how to engage the city. Mayor, you have that.
I got a quick question. You know, part of the things that you've been explaining what you do or what you're planning on doing, you know, the big thing, you know, that we talk about is the measurables, the tangible outcomes. So will you be able to show us by the end of next year exactly all the numbers of how many people are attending these events, you know, all the applicants that apply for our different incentive programs, the amount of money that's given away, so that, you know, I don't know if we had that before this past year.
We don't have that number for this past year, but we do track the jobs that have been created through our 2 grants. Over the past 2 years, we've actually, the money that you have allotted us for those 2 grants, we've been able to create 8 jobs out of that.
Okay.
So we create the jobs, and then under number 7, to specifically address your comment, is the strategic plan tracker, because we're going to track the strategic plan this year, the implementation of each of those projects and initiatives under the strategic plan. But we also list analytics. So it is how many people are attending these events, and if it looks like we aren't getting the greatest return, we make adjustments as we go forward. So yes, that is part of the plan.
Okay, and so that's kind of what I want to know for, I guess, as we move along with this, that we'll be having the quarterly reports that you normally give out.
Yes.
Okay.
That is definitely part of our plan. We talk about...
Mayor stopped, you know,
Yes,
since
sorry.
the
Yes,
mayor
sir.
stopped, I was going to wait until you finish, but since he stopped, I'm going to go ahead and start talking. Okay, first of all, sir, you said that you did brochures and mailings. I'm just saying, you know, I like to see a brochure. I'm just saying, you know, and see what you sent out. I like to see that. I'd like to know how much money, you know, have you brought in here to this city for this economic development? You know, since it's been into the inception, you say you get money, you bring it in. How much have you brought here into the city? That's number one. I'd like to see some testimonies, because I'm just saying, you know, I really don't see. I understand what you're saying. I don't understand. I don't see any fruits of the labor that you're supposed to be doing, okay? And you're talking about startup, rent reimbursements and all that stuff. This is what we're doing at the CRA. We see testimonies of what we are doing here. People are coming in and we're helping them. I like to see on paper, who have you helped? What have you done? You did brochures, you did mailings. What was the return? I'm just saying, when you spend almost $500,000, what are we getting for $500,000? That is my concern, because I feel like money could be, you know, spent elsewhere in this city. I'm just like the mayor, you know, probably it's too early, but I need to know from inception to now, what did we get for our bucks? Where's the bank?
Sure. Well, I mentioned the 8 jobs that were created with the $54,000 in the 2 grants that we have. Outside of the $54,000, most of that is around business meetings and events and tracking those projects. We work with development and bringing in partners to the table. We talked about the new camping world that just was advertised in the home expo space. That was a coordinated event between myself and development.
Sir, thank you. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to have to. You said you created 8 jobs. What type of jobs was created from these 8 jobs? I'm just saying, this is what you
Sure.
can tell me anything. I'm just saying, I like to see proof for the pudding. I'm sorry, this is what I'm saying, 8
Absolutely.
jobs. Was it a lawn maintenance man? Was it a construction worker? I
We
need
can
to see
put that
things
together for tomorrow, David, because
Yeah.
you can put you just have to go back and look at the grants, right?
Sure.
The jobs.
Yes. I can put that together. I
Yeah,
have
we'll
the
bring that
name-
tomorrow.
I have the name of
And the
each of
sample brochure
Absolutely.
that you and Eleanor
Yeah,
are working
the
on, I know it's
brochure
still
we
draft.
have, we work with Town Square with Eleanor when we
Right.
get Town Square.
Yeah, Lori,
So-
I'm
We'll bring
gonna-
that, give you
right,
samples
I'm going to
tomorrow.
look at you and charge you to do that for me. I'm just saying because, first of all, I represent District 2. I'm not seeing no fruition to talk about economic development that's going on here in District 2. Why where we are low, underprivileged. And I'm just saying, all of these things that's going on, grants and all this stuff, how is the word getting out? I see nothing. I'd like for you to tell me what are we getting for $500,000.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm through with it.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I'll just speak briefly to what I know, because I speak to Mr. Scott on a fairly regular basis. One of the main reasons we don't hear so much about the economic grants from the city is because, unlike the CRA, we don't have to approve them, so they don't come before us as an agenda item. But I've personally worked with Mr. Scott to try to find businesses in District 1 who have come to me and asked me about economic opportunities, and he's been helpful with some of those businesses. I won't speak to some of the larger projects that I've been informed about in the works because they're long-term projects with Mr. Scott, but I would urge each of you, some of which are potentially taking place in District 1, some are taking place, I believe, in District 3. These are kind of broad economic visions that when realized, it won't just be this building was built or this business was, given a subsidy. It'll be creating much larger conceptual economic development that brings, when we talk about CRA job creation or these economic grants, this is kind of peanuts compared to what some of the bigger things that are on the horizon are. So I'd simply encourage everybody to try to sit down and talk about some of those broad goals that are right now conceptual but in the works and should be coming to fruition in the next couple of years, because I like seeing businesses come in and individual businesses and creating a couple jobs here or there, but I think that big time kind of projects or big time objectives will lead to new industry in the city or new areas of the city that will drive economic development or will drive business to the city. So I'd encourage everyone to sit down and speak to Mr. Scott on a regular basis, because there is a substantial amount of stuff going. I won't, again, go into it in detail because a lot of it's speculative in the early stages, but as the Commissioner of District 1, there's some extremely exciting stuff that I look forward to seeing come together and be presented to us in the next 12 months that I think everyone will be excited about.
My final comment is, I'm glad, sir, that you work with Mr. Scott. I don't work with Mr. Scott. I'm going to be honest with you right now. I work with the city manager. I'm glad that you all are having some things that you could say for District 1. I'm still saying for District 2. I am concerned. I'm highly concerned. District 2, we are concerned because I'm just saying, we're saying that economic development. Now, he's saying Sarah Sims Park, he's going to have a job fair on the 8th. I haven't seen any advertisement, no nothing. This affects District 2. That's nice. It's in 1, but I'm just saying, whatever is going on that I need to be abreast of, Lori.
Yes, sir.
I need to be abreast. I'm just saying, all I see him walking around. That's the way I see him. I'm sorry. Thank you.
If I might, David, do you work with the CRA? I mean, are you in communication with the CRA when these business developments, do you often say, look at this particular area here, they have also these build-out grants and programs that financially might be of help?
Absolutely. The grants that we talk about here are outside of the CRA. CRA has their own grants within the CRA.
I understand that, but do you steer any business to the CRA?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Michael and I work on specifically projects within the CRA. We're working currently, prior to the advertisement, on the MLK corridor and making sure that we attract development and interest on the MLK corridor. So I've been working with different developers that have come in and set up meetings along with Michael. So we work together very closely on some strategies and bring in partners.
That's good to hear. Now, what about the Chamber of Commerce, our own Chamber of Commerce? Business, you mentioned networking. I know they have a function once a month or so, it's called networking. Do we send any representatives there? Are we communicating, do we have a line of communication with the Chamber of Commerce?
Monthly, they have a Government Affairs Council meeting.
Right.
I attend that along with the city manager. So we attend that. We talk about issues regarding the city and some of the needs of the chamber. Whenever they have networking events, most of the time, whenever I can attend, I attend those networking events also. So I'm out in the community, meeting with all of the businesses and working with the chamber. Absolutely.
Great. And just one more question, printing and binding, you mentioned that was a cost that we incurred. Do we have a specific company that does that for all the city's printing and binding, or is that a random bid that we put out?
That would be through Eleanor, through marketing and communication. So we set aside costs in our budget to do that and coordinate with marketing and communication.
And the reason why I asked that, because we just recently voted on a contract for the CRA brochure printing contract, and we sent out RFPs and got varying contract numbers. So I was wondering, is that something the city could do, or could the city, as we do a lot of these contracts, can we piggyback on a contract that the CRA has established to help with our cost of printing and brochures?
The city can do a number of things. What they do now is the printing jobs vary for the city, obviously. They're not consistent, so it's very hard to put out a citywide printing because one department may do a one-page flyer, another department may do a fun fair magazine, another department may do a postcard. So usually what we do is based on what we're looking for. The individual departments will get quotes for it. Or if it's a large enough job, we'll actually go out and do a formal bid process if we're doing like a calendar because of the dollar that's associated with it. We can always piggyback print awards from other cities and other counties if that's appropriate and if it's feasible. Usually most of the departments look for local. The smaller jobs, that's one of the reasons that, like if you're doing a postcard process, the dollar value of the job is smaller and you may get more local interest. If you're doing a larger job like a magazine or a calendar, you need different types of ability and print processes to do it. But yeah, we look at all the different ones.
That's great, but could we have that discussion, or could we have that conversation with the, let's say, the CRA, and say, look, we know you have a vendor that you've hired on a contract basis, and run that by the vendor to see if that could be a cost-effective move?
We can talk about it
instead of just
see what they
randomly sending it out wherever.
Yep.
And was there a cost savings there? Okay. Okay, so I want to continue it on that path. Thank you.
Public Works?
Oh, you didn't want to, I was going to finish. Yeah, I could be.
All right.
Would you like me to finish?
No.
I mentioned Workforce Development Program, which is something that we just recently developed in partnership with E2L. Again, connecting jobs with the community as well as local businesses. So this infographic talks about hiring a partner. Again, we don't have the internal staffing to run a program like this, so we partner with the private sector. So that circle in the center is our private sector partner who is engaged by the developer, in this case E2L, and that private partner takes job orders from the developer, whether it's vendor orders or specific positions required for labor. They go out and find that labor, working with partners like CareerSource, Palm Beach State College, and others, South Tech, to provide training or actually those people to fill the positions. And they reach into the community to determine whether or not those positions exist or whether or not the labor exists and whoever's interested in filling those positions. So it's almost like a targeted recruitment for E2L. It's a cost savings to E2L because everybody is coordinated through this one entity. It also helps us track the job numbers of how many people are actually engaged from the city of Boynton. And it is purposely directed to maximizing the benefit of the E2L development project for the city, specifically for the city of Boynton. So as we go forward, there will be tracking numbers there would be data, there would be metrics on how many local people or local residents we have engaged on the development project. And the thought is that while we call this the Workforce Development Building Bridges Program Partner, there could be more than one partner depending on how many development projects we have. So that's just one I wanted to talk about when you say workforce development. The next slide talks about the accelerator. As we talk about the seed funding and access to venture capital, that investment that the $50,000 we mentioned could go towards helping build local entrepreneurs and startups. And that's what the intent was. This is pretty much what an accelerator is. We don't, again, internally, we don't want to staff up to build our own accelerator, so we turn to private partners. And we have some private partners who are very interested in putting together accelerators to help startups and entrepreneurs. We're working with the BDB and others on what that looks like. We provide the seed funding, as I mentioned, venture capital. We also look at the things like the new opportunity grants that are coming online to participate in that, and any CDBG money that might be available. We look to drop that into this program. And by leveraging those few dollars, inexpensive workspace, as we talk about the new City Hall, providing workspace for local startups in the new City Hall, we're able to leverage all the other things that are on the right-hand side, which is marketing expertise, financial services, networking, all those things that new startups need to get going. So with that, I think these are all the partners that we mentioned we work with, and I'm sure there are a lot more. I mean, there are a lot more, but these are the major ones that we have worked with: the county, the state, the federal government, the education partners, some of the CDFIs, the Paragon, which is a funder, and of course the Palm Beach County and the BDB and the Chamber. So with that, yes, ma'am.
David, as our economic development director, one of the main issues that I hear from a lot of people who are interested in opening businesses here in Boynton Beach is the lack of inventory in terms of space. What are we doing to help change that for the future? And how does your role directly really help impact that change as we really try to impact and improve our economic development and our business outcomes here for the city?
We are a built-out city, so there's not much new space for new construction. We have a lot of development online that's coming up. So I work very closely with Department of Development, with Mike Rump, as we identify opportunities. We are looking as we look at what we're putting up. The people who are moving into the city, into the new condos, aren't people who necessarily people who live here. People who live here already have homes. There's going to be a new wave of people who are coming in to fill these spaces that we are building. So there's a lot of marketing that has to go on. So I'm also talking with a lot of our partners and what that looks like. How do we bring more people in? What type of, working with Eleanor, what type of branding, as you talk about branding the city, how are we branding the city? How are we marketing the city? So working through that. I have meetings with partners in Broward County and Miami-Dade because people land at the airport. We want the people who land at the airports, either Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach County, or Palm Beach, or Miami, to come here, visit here, live here, work here. So when you talk about economic development, it's very tangible and intangible. And the intangible part is attracting new people here, making, and as we talk about business retention, make sure people want to come here, stay here, and as Eleanor hates for me to say, live, work, and play in the city of Boynton. So specifically, those are some of the strategies that we work on.
Okay, I didn't really get the answer that I was looking for, but I think that's something that somehow, some way we have to work on, and that should be part of a strategic plan that's created by your department as to how do we work with current owners of some of these buildings that are perhaps outdated, dilapidated, that maybe have liens and fees on them that just haven't really been used properly, especially along our federal highway corridor. Those are the specific areas that I would be targeting to try to see how we improve and just get the owners who perhaps have left these buildings to disrepair to get them on board and kind of see what's happening in Boynton Beach to really improve the outcome of those buildings, and also maybe perhaps open up opportunities, like you said, since we are a built-out city, open up opportunities for people who perhaps are looking for a place to put their new business but just don't have a current home yet. So I would be looking into that as a strategic plan initiative for this fiscal year for your department. In addition, how is our partnership with Research Park FAU coming in terms of, I believe we were talking about trying to do some type of co-working space in our new downtown in the library. How's that working along? Is that something that's still being talked about, or are we still going to be moving forward with that initiative?
I think Mr. Collins, you can help with that one. The new space in City Hall.
Did you guys check out? Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Y'all could hear me, but she couldn't. So yeah, to answer your question, you're right. So we have that new incubator space we're developing in the new City Hall. And part of the program that David's working on this year is that incubator business grant program,
Right.
which is the start of finding that, bringing that company in. The one you mentioned is one of them. There's other interested parties in coming in and managing that. That's probably something we're going to go out in 6 to 8 months with some kind of RFQ or something to try to find the right group that wants to work with us on that space. We need to fully develop. Do we want it for technology? Do we want it for business? Do we want it for, we have to go through that. And we're going to be working with everybody who's interested in trying to develop what do we really want, the type of incubator businesses we want to come in. So that's something that Dave and I are going to work together on, starting with his grant that'll start building that program with entrepreneurs and incubator entrepreneurs within the city, and then we'll grow it into that space. And my goal is we grow it into that space, and then it'll grow into other spaces in the city. That was a great question about buildings. I mean, we need to redevelop some of the city. We don't have any more empty space, but we have space that can be redeveloped, and this open office and incubator space is something we can work on. So, yeah, to answer your question, I'm hoping I'm answering it. It's just we're not quite there yet to go out and actually say, okay, we're ready to do it, because we're, 15, 16 months out.
Right, I just want to know that the plan is still there,
Yeah,
and that
so the
these
plan is still there.
initiatives are still being thought of and making sure to
Absolutely.
implement them as that time
Absolutely,
comes.
the plan is there. We have the space, and we're finalizing the plans right now to
Okay.
try to build that space.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't know if anybody or Andrew might be the one who could answer this, but what's the status of the time frame on the redevelopment of the retail strip in Riverwalk and the out parcel that's going to increase the retail availability at that area of Federal by thousands upon thousands of square feet?
We'll send you an updated schedule. I think the last one we sent you was about 2 months ago. I don't think they've changed that schedule. I can't remember it off the top of my head. I have a lot of schedules in my brain right now. But I can get it for you because we do have that schedule from them. So I just can't remember off the top of my head. Sorry.
No rush.
I just got one question, David. It pertains to the Boynton Beach Mall. I know they got a new owner now. Are we actively pursuing them or talking to them, having that conversation with them, how important it is that, something gets done there?
Absolutely. That's one of the comments that Commissioner Katz just mentioned. Because it is being discussed and is very high level at this point and very confidential, so I don't want to share too much information, but absolutely. We have engaged the mall in those conversations, and we also have some other partners that are working with the mall. So some point in time, you'll be able to see that, and it's probably not going to look the same way it looks today.
Great, thank you.
David, so one of the things is that I know that you give us like quarterly reports. I think that this year we're going to put them in the city commission so that you can present it to the city as well. The other thing is that, like you said with Camping World, if you had anything to do bringing in Camping World, I think, you paid for yourself with the selling of that $8 million, I think, 10-year-old vacant structure, the fact that that's moving forward. I appreciate all that you've done for that. But that also leads to the other big box retailers that we're losing, just like Toys R Us. We lost Sports Authority. I also would like to make sure that you are working with the BDB and the surrounding areas to make sure that our big spaces that are vacant get filled out, because, Camping World is going to be, 100-plus jobs, something in that sense, once it finally gets hopefully built and opened?
Yes.
And do you expect it to be open this fiscal year?
I haven't heard the schedule. I have not
Okay.
heard the schedule.
Well, I think that's something you need to look into then.
Yep.
I appreciate it. All right. Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you so much, David.
Thank you.
Just a footnote before we get public work.
Yep.
Jeff Livergood is on his way.
Oh, no, he's not. He's in Illinois till like October.
It's too hot down here now for it.
Good evening. Andrew Mack, Public Works Director. Been in the job for 2.5 months now. I can tell you I've been truly blessed working with the staff over there, the managers, meeting some of the frontline workers. I've really reached out to each one of the employees and got to know them on a personal level, meeting them as they go out and start their routes in the morning, start cutting the grass, looking at it, meeting them in the field. We have a great staff there. I just want you to know that. Tony? A brief overview of the budget here. It's broken up. I have the divisions within the Public Works Department that aren't enterprise funds. The first one being Public Works Admin. There was a small decrease in that. You're saving quite a bit of money with me versus Jeff. So.
Oh, Andrew.
The second division, facilities, you also realized a small decrease there as well. And I'll further go into some of the highlights of each one of the divisions. Streets division also saw a decrease about 2.9%. Engineering was an increase of 6.2%, and Parks and Grounds is an increase of 4.2%. So some of the highlighted changes in the engineering division, we looked at our staffing and looked at it to evaluate our needs, and after reviewing that, we looked at the CAD Tech Design Supervisor position, and we just don't have a full-time need for that. So we decided to eliminate that position and to bring in a full-time engineer. This also was to help with to manage our capital load. Obviously, with the penny sales tax, we now have an increased capital load. So to ensure that we're getting those projects done and completed on time, we need some more project managers to help facilitate that. Another part of that aspect in the engineering increase was survey services. This is our outsourcing to our consultant. We saw an increase in our plat reviews. This is outsourced, so we had an increase in that, as well as special projects for surveying. In facilities, we saw a 4.5% decrease. This was realized mostly through the decreasing of repairs for mechanical, contractual services, building materials based on the demolition of City Hall, Library, Fire Station 1, and the Police Department. The Streets Division, we saw a 3% decrease. There was a significant retirement in the Streets Division that helped with the salary and benefits. We had a rollover of staff, and we had an increase there also with the railroad lease to the new crossings with Brightline. In the Parks and Ground Division, we had a 4.2% increase, and this was mostly in regards to rebidding of our landscape bid. So we're anticipating some increases to that as well. Some successes that we've had in the department. We're currently and have already opened some of these continuing service contracts for painting, paving, concrete, minor construction work. Some of these you're going to be seeing on a future agenda. This will help speed up our process when we're going to procure these different types of services. So this is something that's going to be a real benefit to our department. Some of the challenges, obviously, we have an increase in cost of materials and labor. We also have a challenge for competition with labor with the private sector. Obviously, with construction up, we're competing for the same personnel. And then, as always, we have illegal dumping, and litter is always a challenge in our department. Some of the initiatives, we have Town Square Construction Management. We'll be managing a lot of the projects within Town Square project. And another project that I would like to do is the rebranding of our Public Works Department vehicles. One other success I'd be remiss in not speaking to it would be...
Andrew,
sure.
Can you elaborate on the rebranding of Public Works vehicles?
Okay, I'll show you. Okay, let's go back. So what I want to do is, we've already started washing our trucks weekly now. The solid waste trucks, you'll see the trucks should be looking cleaner. We just started doing that last Wednesday through a consultant, outsourced consultant contractor. We envision what we do is we're going to take the new branding that Eleanor has, and we're going to put it on each one of the trucks. This would be a supervisor truck, but we also look to do this on the solid waste vehicles and equipment as well. Absolutely. That's Eleanor's already hit me up with that one. And
The challenge accepted one?
yes. So again, one other thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't speak to our staff. As part of this temporary move with City Hall, the police department, the timing of the procurement, and then just the costs involved. We've done a lot of the work in-house, and I'd be remiss not to thank our public works, our facilities, and our parks. They're incredible crews. They work together, and they're getting it done to make sure that we move on time and within budget. And I open it up to any questions.
Mention the, I know I sent the email out to the commission, but for the benefit of the public as well, the quiet zone status.
Sure, absolutely. So I had a meeting last week.
The quiet zones, I had sent an email update to you, but it'd be nice to mention it for the public too. Yeah.
I'll be doing, I will also be doing a Facebook Live for Eleanor in the future on this as well. Okay. So last week I met with the Brightline representative and Palm Beach County TPA, and in order to implement the quiet zone, we had 4 additional supplemental safety measures that were required in the city at 4 different crossings. 3 of the 4 crossings will be complete by the first week in August, and the 4th on Ocean Avenue will be complete by the end of September. The good news is the TPA and the Brightline reran our calculator, and we are eligible now, after they complete the 3 crossings, to submit our notice of establishment for the quiet zone. So we intend to do that August 6th, and then the quiet zone would be in effect on August 27th. With that, any questions?
Andrew, I just have one. I believe it was last budget hearing we had, and I know the golf course is going to come up, but there was some talk that we could wrap some of our city vehicles in advertisement as far as advertising the golf course and such. Has that been discussed at all?
We haven't had that conversation, but it definitely is a possibility that we could do advertising on vehicles, yes.
Yeah, I didn't want to wrap them until they were clean. So now he's getting them cleaned.
Okay, but that's a discussion you'll be having?
Discussion we're going to
Yes.
have. Yeah.
Okay, great.
And my take is, I know that we've been utilizing staff to do a lot of things, like the Town Square project, but the streets are being swept, they're being neglected now. When do you all think that will get back on a route, get back, start doing what they used to do?
Currently, one of the retirements in the streets division was the person that ran the street sweeper. So we're looking at that job should be filled shortly, and we should be able to get that back out on route soon.
Yeah, that was a job vacancy. That's nothing to do with the people working on Town Square. We just had a vacancy, and it's only one position.
That was the guy that was sweeping the streets. I see him, I know the guy.
That's right.
The truck is not sitting idle. I'm saying, when will we start seeing?
When we fill that position, it will start sweeping.
Okay, so we can't utilize the guy that's already sweeping the streets?
Retired.
Yeah, he retired.
He retired. He's not.
He retired. He was.
Both of them retired? So that was a Spanish guy that was sweeping the streets, okay? Y'all know what's going on? Yes, I know what's going on.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
All right.
You know more than I do. How many street sweepers do we have? Just one?
One, just one.
Truck that does all our streets?
Yes.
Is that sufficient?
Say that again?
Because I've never seen you come up in District 4 with a street sweeper. Does it cross 95,
Oh,
the
yes.
street sweeper?
Yes, absolutely.
Could you tell me the last time it was in District 4?
Sure. And actually, one of the things that we're doing as a part of the routeware, we're equipping that vehicle with the ABL, so we'll be able to track the real time with that as well.
That's great. So get back to me when the last time the street sweeper was in District 4.
Sure, we track all the miles.
Okay, great.
We can give you a report of what the schedule is, because there is a set schedule.
Okay, great. I'd like to see that.
And that is, half of that's funded by stormwater also. So it's part of our stormwater requirement, just sweep these streets. Boy, say that 3 times fast. But,
What does that position pay?
I want to say it was in the 30s or 40s, something around
yeah,
there.
it's an equipment operator position.
40s. Teaching.
You have to have a CDL to drive that. You have to have a CDL to operate that vehicle.
Are you applying this?
Ask for a reason.
I have a question. If everyone's done. I believe cameras are, I know that there's a different name for them, but the ones that we're going to be putting on our public works trucks are garbage trucks. When do those get put into effect? Are they already been installed? Have they already
The
been
routeware, that's the part of the routeware.
Yes.
We are ready to install they've been procured. The installer, the company that's doing the install, we've been delayed a little bit. As part of the rollout, we have to integrate with our SunGuard, our enterprise software, and we've had a little bit of a setback in trying to pull the data out of our system to deliver it to routeware. But just as early as last week, I believe the ITS staff were able to get that information. So we're hoping to have that by the end of July.
Okay, it's going to be beta, or it's going to be full on go right as you guys install it?
When we install it, it'll be running on the data that we have, and then as we integrate with it, it'll be real time. So it'll be tied in with real time with our enterprise software, because our process comes from the utility customer service accounts, so that's what they're tying in.
So as soon as they're installed, they'll be live and you'll
Yes,
start tracking?
absolutely.
Okay.
Correct.
And then the other side of that is when we, lost my question. Sorry, lost my train of thought.
Okay.
It's okay.
Sometimes that's not how it doesn't go
Any
to the
other
station.
questions from the commission?
Just one more question. It was brought up a couple of meetings ago at the commission meeting, the pavers that we have lined in the intersections, some of our intersections. When was the last time they were power washed, or had they ever been power washed? Is that something that's going to be on a schedule?
Seacrest and like Boynton Beach Boulevard,
Yeah.
they're just covered in oil.
To my knowledge, they haven't been power washed. That's something that we'll have to look into to do. We can do that. It has to be done at night, and we'll have to have
Well, whenever it
proper
has to be
routine.
done, but it's
Yeah.
never, I mean, it's amazing, it's never been done as far
Yeah.
as,
It's quite a few things I'm finding that we're going to end up doing for the first time.
okay,
So-
great. So, okay.
I remember my other question.
Okay.
When are we going to go electronic at the development department?
But I'll answer. I believe that the anticipated schedule is prior to us moving to the temporary space, which is scheduled for August 24th. So they're hoping to be up and running before we move.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Just under the.
It's short. Tony, it's
So which one are we
Okay.
doing now?
Yeah. Go to the fleet one. Okay. All right. Go ahead. So the fleet division, we saw a 7.7% increase this year in this division. So some of the highlighted changes are we've included funding as incentives for the mechanics to achieve their ASC certification. Other contractual services, we've included outsourcing portions of solid waste vehicle maintenance. We saw an increase in the fuel, tires, and tubes based on materials and inflation. This year, our vehicle purchases increased almost $1 million due to the replacement cycle of the vehicles. And we've had a decrease in our budget based on the building improvements, which were scheduled for $600,000 as part of the building improvements with the awning. Some of the successes, we've procured a consultant to do the fleet services study, and we're looking forward to having them start that. We've also procured the contractor, or it's set to be awarded at our upcoming commission meeting for the awning outside the fleet maintenance facility. Some of the challenges that we have is obviously the size of our fleet maintenance building and the vehicle storage areas. Also some of the specialized vehicle maintenance that we deal with. Another challenge that we have is time to research, order, and delivery of parts. Definitely hoping that as part of our fleet study that we'll get some good recommendations from the consultant and be able to implement some changes in this division. Again, some of the initiatives, we have the fleet services study and then rebranding of the Public Works Department vehicles. And then if that have any questions on fleet?
Andrew, does that include a possible relocation of the Public Works building?
Yes, that also contemplates them look at designing some preliminary space planning and doing some preliminary layouts on possible parcels as well. They're doing a study. They're going to look at the space planning of what it would take to build a new public works facility, and then we'll look at additional sites that we could go on and do some conceptual layouts, kind of very diagrammatic stuff.
Yeah, what would we do with the property in District 2?
I guess that would be opened up for redevelopment as a part of a CRA project. I believe that was contemplated early on, as I think there's some plans in the CRA plan. Yeah.
A question I always have is electric vehicles. I know that we've had one for over a year now. I spoke with Jeff before he leaves. He says that we weren't using that to its full potential. We weren't getting enough mileage out of it. Have we decided what to do with actual getting electric vehicles so that more of our city's fleet can be that?
Honestly, I haven't evaluated any new additional electric vehicles. I do know that we did talk to Shane Kittendorf as possibility of rotating that vehicle out of the building division and to give it to somebody who would put more miles on it to better utilize it. We're still talking to him about that. The employee who drives it, the electrical inspector, is actually more in the field now. What happened was he was doing more plan review, and now he's doing more field inspections. So we're still waiting to see that, but we may rotate that out of the building division and get them a different vehicle so that we can better utilize it to its fullest benefit.
Okay. And so I guess I'd like to see that this year, basically how, what is the cost benefit for having that electric vehicle versus, and how many miles is used versus having a regular vehicle?
Okay, absolutely.
Any other questions for fleet maintenance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Good evening. My presentation is fairly short, but one thing we can say is that we were able to decrease our general fund budget by almost 2%, which is primarily due to the fact that we were able to reduce staffing costs as a result of the elimination of the Art and Civic Center, which is also reflected in the fact that the program revenue fund the anticipated revenue has decreased significantly because those are the two facilities at which we were able to generate the most income. We do want to highlight the fact that we are asking to add a park ranger position, a part-time position. This will have a significant positive improvement to our operations, whereby that will allow us to do a much better job at locking gates and bathrooms and being able to do that on a year-round basis, because quite honestly, we just simply do not do a good job of that right now. And the fact that we can also take a step up in the manner in which we inspect our playgrounds throughout the city. We have 19, I believe, right now, so as you can imagine, that's a fairly challenging task. And of course, the fact that the revenue fund in our programs is going to be decreasing because of the loss of those facilities. But we do see that as an opportunity for reevaluating our entire programming structure, which is something that is readily apparent from the standpoint that we are going to have to find ways to adapt and modify to some very significant changes, but we see that as an opportunity for growth and to really look at the way we're doing things and do them in a much more effective and efficient manner. I failed to include a slide for successes, and I do want to quickly mention that certainly starting with some of the current ones, we were very glad to see that our ribbon cutting ceremony for our Easy Dock, which is the facility that we added to Oyer Park to enable people with special needs to enjoy the waterway by giving them a piece of equipment that they can use to get into a kayak or even a canoe without having to deal with some obstacles that they may encounter because of their limitations. We also added the playground at Barrier Free Park. We were able to make some much needed improvements to our pavilion rental process, whereby this year, knock on wood, we have had to do no refunds at all, whereas previously that was a very challenging situation because we didn't have the staff on weekends to monitor those facilities. So those are some highlights, and if you have any questions, I'd be more than glad to try to answer. Yes, sir.
Wally, so I brought up a little while ago at a city commission meeting that there is a planned expansion of the Crowder Park and Dog Park in the new Cortina development next to Renaissance Commons, and through discussion with the developer, they've agreed to put up $500,000 towards the startup costs for the expansion of the dog park, as well as the creation of a fishing dock on that pond just adjacent to it. We've had discussions about utilizing a fraction of the park impact fees to assist with some of the upgrades above and beyond what they intended to do. And through discussion with them, the developer and the master association of those various new developments, they've indicated that the annual increase to maintenance as a result of some of the upgrades that we've discussed would be about $21,000. I'd like, with the will of the commission to try to identify that $21,000 to facilitate what would not only be an expansion of that existing dog park and the creation of a fishing dock, but pavilions, activated green space. There's additional parking planned for it. I'd like to see if we can make sure that $21,000 is available in some way, shape, or form, either from with the existing budget or if the city manager has any recommendations on how to reallocate funds, if that's possible.
Let me make sure $21,000 a year, or just one time $21,000?
Annually.
Annually. I need to hear.
And that's something certainly that I can work with the city manager in regards to identifying how and.
We'll bring that back when we bring the budget back in September.
Okay.
Question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. In regards to this part-time park ranger, who's going to be responsible for making sure parks are closed? Who's going to make sure that they're open?
Well, at this point, they are open in the morning by either staff or I believe a staff has been handling opening them, and opening them has not been a problem. Our problem has been closing them. So at this point, as I understand it, we have the resources available to open them in the morning. The challenge is in the evening where we don't have staff available.
I'm aware of that, but I just want to make sure, since we have a part-time park ranger, sir, responsible for closing.
Yes.
I don't want to run into a problem with making sure that they're open. That's my take. I'm just saying. So somebody make sure that if staff going to do it, then says staff is going to do it. That's it. That's the
Yes, sir.
here.
We will be able to do that.
Thank you.
One of my questions would be is regarding our camps. I know that, summer camps is an issue, but we also have camps throughout the year. Do we make it clear that anybody who lives in the city of Boynton Beach, there are grants available for them to attend any of our city camps?
Hey, anybody who's interested in registering for a program is certainly eligible to register for a program, whether it be summer camps or any of our other recreational activities.
What I'm asking is that are there grants available? I know that we have grants available for the summer camps, for swim lessons. Are there also grants available for camps, after-school programs, and I guess during the school year?
Yes, we for the other programs, not necessarily grants. We have been able to deal with hardships as they become apparent to us. We handle them on a case-by-case basis. But do we have an established funding source for that type of activity beyond just summer camps? No. But I can tell you on a case-by-case basis, if we find a participant that has an issue financially, we will try to work with them in any way possible to accommodate them. And at least in my career, I can tell you that, we don't get that many appeals for financial assistance, but when we do, we generally are able to work with them.
Okay. I guess the next question is that as we are losing the Civic Center and the Art Center and the Playhouse, what is happening to the staff there? Where are they planning on going?
Well, as we mentioned, we were able to reduce the budget because we were able to eliminate one position. The other positions have been relocated between the Carolyn Sims Center and the Hester Center.
Okay.
It was a vacant position that will remain vacant for now.
Right, for now. And then, remember, the high school is going to be finished in about soon, and we're going to need staff for that, so we'll be coming back when that's ready. We just didn't want to fund somebody that's not needed right now.
Absolutely.
When is the high school going to be finished?
The current schedule is March. Now,
Next year.
We won't be able to fully utilize it until the city hall is done because of parking, but we'll be able to partially utilize it for recreation programs. We just won't be fully utilizing all the lease space, the availability for everybody else to use it because we don't have a lot of parking.
Right.
But it will be open, and we'll be using it in March timeframe.
Okay. One of the things is that I spoke with the Palm Beach County School District, and we have an interlocal agreement with them, and they said they are willing to allow us to use their space within the city limits of Boynton Beach to help with programs. And that's kind of what I'd like to see if, that's in the budget, instead of trying to force everybody going to Carolyn Sims Center and Ezel Hester, if we are able to, branch out and go with some of the other schools that are in the area, maybe it be Point Siena, even though it's choice, or Forest Park? Rolling Green, Cross Point, Citrus Cove, Freedom Shores. We have a lot of different elementary schools that if we can partner with the school district, because we have staff that used to have an art center, that used to have a civic center that no longer has it.
Right.
I'd hate to see, kids, an overcrowding issue over at Carolyn Sims and Ezel Hester. And so, if you're saying that we're not losing anybody and we're just putting everyone together, I would hate to see, 2 employees for every 1 child.
No, not at all. And with all due respect to the school district, they do say that their facilities are available, but unless something has changed in the summer, they only make those facilities available for 4 days. So we can't run a summer camp during just 4 days. And when they make those facilities available, you still have to pay their staff to be there. So that adds to the cost of our program that's then passed on to the participant.
Okay.
So yeah, they'll let us in their building, but under the pretense that we're going to pay one of their staff or more to be there as nothing else, as a custodial basis to open up the doors and make sure that they lock them and so. So yeah, they're available on a limited basis and with a fee.
Okay. And so do we have any programs available for, I guess, people in middle school from 12 to 14 during the school year?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you exact examples right now, but among many things, all of our facilities are available for drop-in recreation, where they can come into the building. For example, at Hester, they can come in and the building, play basketball, shoot pool, enjoy the facilities. They will be supervised, they will be safe, and they can all enjoy all the amenities within that, the weight room. So there are opportunities beyond just organized recreational activities. So those facilities are available for just their enjoyment, and they're quite heavily used.
Okay.
The JTC is always a program that we have available, provides mentoring, job skill development.
Okay.
We still have the Youth Empowerment Center that's very, very active for kids 13 through 18. Frank Carlin is that at the Carolyn Sims Center. It's the program that is available for free. We try to vary it, whereby we want to mix a little bit of educational things in there along with the recreational component. That's available throughout the year at the Carolyn Sims Center.
We've been talking too, Mayor, with Annette Gray, who's, as you, I think several of you have committed some funding to assist her with her mobile.
Plus.
Yeah, I forget what she's calling it, but it's her GBDC. But we've talked to her and are working on, if she gets up and running on that, and I think she's now getting the technology loaded onto the bus, to be able to come bring that into neighborhoods. We had a long talk one day about the lack of wanting to do more for middle school and high schoolers and getting them interested. And they're not going to want to necessarily come to a facility, but she gets that bus into the community where we can bring them on. They can learn skills of interviewing and even integrate the technology and the videos and whatever it is that gets them interested. But that we're working on doing something like that, because I think that's going to make a big difference. We're trying to get kids involved.
Okay.
We have a tough time getting them to come into the building.
All right. Thank you. Mac?
Commissioner.
Yeah, Wally, you said about the price for the Palm Beach County school system for the use of their facility. What is that price?
It depends on how long you use it and the way you use it. For example, when we use Boynton Beach High School.
Excuse me, I'm just going to stop you. If you don't know the dollar amount, I'm going to stop you now. I need to know the dollar amount. That's what I'm going to be really looking for. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. That's all.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The city manager mentioned potentially partnering with outside entities to provide them with funds potentially to come into the community. I think that, and I won't go into too much detail because in lieu of recent events and alleged litigation and things of that nature, I think it raises the question of whether or not a municipality, a government, should even be providing such services and exposing taxpayers to costly litigation when we could potentially create a grant system to contract with private sector partners who could potentially provide those services. So again, I won't go into any greater detail because of the ongoing situation, but I think that expanding offerings of this nature, given the circumstances we now find ourselves under, brings some of those deeper questions about the role of government and whether or not we should be partnering versus providing such types of services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to do golf course now, or I know we're getting close to 8 o'clock?
Yes,
Oh, it is 8 o'clock.
It is
so-
8 o'clock. Library? I don't know if there's a presentation, but,
No?
all right, all like, great.
I didn't see it now.
What are we doing without a library, or for the month? And what do we plan for the whole next year?
Good evening, Craig Clark, Library Director. The library budget's pretty straightforward for next year, the request. I was able to reduce the operation expenses by $1,501, and the personnel expenses increased by 1%. That's probably due to last year's raises. But overall, it's pretty much flat. We're just going to kind of try and maintain what we have in the temporary site and, provide a good level of service to the public while we're rebuilding our new buildings.
Explain the $1,501. You just said $1,501 and you kept going.
I reduced postage by 1,970, so I increased some and decreased others. We mail out a lot less letters to people
So
now.
that was the postage part that got
Reduced, yes.
That's what I need to be hearing. You said 1,501. I'm like, what?
Yeah, but overall, it's pretty much, there's just an overall increase of 21,573, and that's...
Okay, by us going to a smaller space, are we losing employees?
I'm sorry?
By us going to a smaller building, are we losing employees?
We are not losing employees.
Okay.
We'll be just as busy as we are as we are in the current building. So.
Yeah, I want to see it before y'all open it up.
Okay.
And I guess one of the other things is that, I know that we offer a lot of services besides just renting books and movies that we do online, like Zinio. Is it possible if you guys can do a presentation for the City Commission, I guess, during the year about all the things that we can use besides just checking books out and give us a little bit more advertising for the library?
Sure, absolutely. Lori and Tim, can you arrange to put that on the agenda at some point, and then we'll be happy to do a presentation. Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
But we used to, let departments present, once, but I don't know what happened, but I was enjoying it. I don't know. But maybe you'll be the first one to start back.
Well, yeah, we sure can. We've just had full agendas, and sometimes, because I know that just takes time, we'd like us to. We'd love any opportunity to share what we do.
I think, and so I know that moving forward, it's not that we need an overview of everything that you guys do, but if you could give us fun facts about, something that the public may not know that is very important for them about all our different departments.
Yeah, and one thing we're also going to do this coming year is we're going to shift some of our expenses from print to online. So we're going to be adding some new databases. We're going to bring back Ancestry.com for genealogy, which is really popular. You see the commercials on TV quite a bit. So we're going to shift some of those expenses to bring on some more online products, and we can include that in the presentation as well.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
I want to do the genealogy online. I might be some kid to you, okay?
We can help you with it. We can help you with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I guess what I'd like to ask the commission is that do we want to finish off the general fund? I think we're missing like the clerk, city commission, city manager, and HR. Do we have any presentations for any of them? Does the commission have any questions?
I would just request that if what's left can't be done before tomorrow night's city commission meeting because it's a delayed start time, that we continue tonight, because I will be entirely unavailable on Wednesday, and then all those votes have to come after all this stuff. So
yeah,
if
No,
everything can be done tomorrow.
I'm just trying to finish out general fund before we move to maybe general capital or any of the utility and other funds.
Tomorrow will be enough time to do the capital and utilities. And so all we have now, Tim can do 5 minutes on the administrative departments, and then we have golf course.
Yeah, let's do the administrative departments. Okay.
So I'll just start from the top and go down.
Okay.
So your first one
Gotta
is...
stay closer.
City Commission went up by $9,300. The majority of that is the increase in the state pension for the FRS system that the elected officials belong to. Next one is City Manager, went up $4,600. That's a combination of smaller increases in general employees' pension cost, some printing cost. It's sort of spread out all over the budget, so there's not one particular line item that we can really focus to. The City Hall General Admin, this is the number that had the town square funding in it for Phase 1 and Phase 2 that caused the $13 million. As you notice, we dropped to 3. That got reduced out for next year. Also, we moved special events such as 4th of July, holiday parade, and MLK out of here into special events. So those numbers came out of there. Marketing and communications went up 11%. The majority of that 36,000 is we're budgeting $20,000 for focus groups next year. Part of the strategic plan is 1 year we do a survey, which we're doing this year. The next year we do focus groups within each district to talk about the vision for the city. So that's an additional expense that we didn't have prior. Special events, the $251,000, like I mentioned before, it's the full-time position and part-time position from recreation and funding for the 4th of July holiday boat parade and the MLK event. Town Square project, $5.6 million. That includes the $4.5 million payment plus the cost for the rent for the interim space for the library, city hall, and police departments for next year. City clerk went up $194,000. No election this year. At least one election next year, probably a runoff. We're not sure, so we budget for both just in case.
So, yeah, I want $87,000 for citywide election.
Yeah, about $75,000 to $80,000 per citywide.
All right. I know Commissioner Katz and Commissioner Casello made comments about that. You know, do we need the runoff? I mean, the other option is that if we partner with, I guess, the November elections, is that, you know, I know that when we had the presidential primary, it didn't cost us,
right?
If I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So if we have it on a November election, is that a way that the city could save the money for not having an election? Doing its own election, I mean?
Will we have to change the charter? Yes.
We would have to, so that may be a question that we would discuss and to see if we want to have that charter change.
It has to be approved by a supervisor of elections too, right?
I know the charter has to be
So,
changed.
and the other issue you had for future elections, I don't think it would affect this particular election or this cycle.
Personally, I like the March municipals. I was hoping we could re-stimulate this conversation about ranked choice voting, which would eliminate any added cost of runoff elections. I know that this is something that has to get through the supervisor election, but I believe the state of Maine now conducts all of their state and congressional elections through ranked choice voting as of this year. And without going back into it again, it allows you to vote for who your second choice would be if your first choice doesn't win on the same ballot, essentially conducting the runoff simultaneously, saving all those costs.
I think that may be something for someone that's going to Tallahassee.
Jim has some information that
The scheduling of elections for municipalities in Palm Beach County is established by special act of the state legislature, so we cannot change it by charter amendment. We can change it by legislative action.
So it would be someone going to Tallahassee.
And then I guess the other question is that for choice voting, what the Commissioner Katz says, is that something that has to be approved by the supervisor election, or is that also, can we change that by charter?
We cannot change that by charter. The supervisor election has the authority to establish the methodology of the election based upon state law. So that also cannot be changed.
She was not very favorable last time, but I have not given up.
And I suspect it'll be the same response this time.
Okay.
She doesn't
All right,
seem to
thank
change
you.
her mind. So that's the increase in the city clerk's budget. Financial services went up $51,000. Part of that is basic salary cost, employees' pension. Again, spread across, it's a 4% increase. Your information technology went down $14,000. That was a reduction in some of the maintenance agreements since we're not going to have these buildings at downtown anymore. So they were able to reduce some of the maintenance costs there. Human resources went down $6,000. Again, it's spread across a number of lines.
And that's not because we're losing personnel?
No. Everybody, all personnel stays the same in all these departments. City attorney had a minor increase of $1,000. No request for increase in hourly rates. So that stays the same. Which one?
Okay.
That's it. Any questions?
If those maintenance cost decreases because the buildings are not going to, those are going to reoccur in the next 18 months or 2 years down the road.
They'll pop back up
They'll come
once
back.
we get back in. Yeah, but the leases go away. You'll have a number, with the new buildings, you're going to have a number of a different type of expenses you're going to see. Because there'll be different technologies put in, so there'll be different type of maintenance agreements or ongoing cost.
I guess we're moving on to golf now. I've got some head nods. All right, Ron?
Good evening. This will be your best presentation of the night.
All right.
Does it look better already?
Just for disclosure, it should be known that the city manager and her husband are taking courses at the Publix link, so.
And doing very well. Doing very well. This is our mission statement, and pretty straightforward to provide the public. This, I think, is a very important slide for us. It's a very, if anybody follows golf, the gentleman on the left just won one of the biggest tournaments, the U.S. Open, which is one of the 4 majors in the world, and he just won it back-to-back years. And that's a picture of him when he was 12 years old with his dad when he won the adult child tournament at the links of Boynton Beach. So he's number 4 ranked in the world, and we just had a bunch of camps at our golf course this year, and we showed all these kids our plaque, and you want to win the U.S. Open, you got to go through the links. A lot of our Audubons, a lot of the nature you see at the golf course. A lot of things that we do in the community are, the girls up top there are very big, are just repeat champions again this year. Our breast cancer tournament raised over $6,500 this year. The vice mayor on the left learning some putting. Some Earth Day pictures there. New greens on the left there. Putting surface resurfaced. Big improvement on the driving range. Huge expansion there. Beautiful.
Hold your point right there. Are we having a concert on the green this year?
Is that a special event?
All right, go ahead.
This is the financial outcomes of improvement. You can see the amount of rounds that increased. This is all basically due to the greens that we put in. So 13% increase in cart and green fees revenue, 25% increase in range revenue. We're on pace to make this year's budget and also paying back the general fund. And answer to Susan Orr's question, the increases you see, that was while Cypress Creek and all were open. Now that they have closed, we do expect more daily fee players and memberships to increase next year, which we're going to be doing some adjustments in our schedules for our. So we've already picked up a little bit this summer due to their closures. But that the increases you see there, big difference in the greens. That was our rates that we changed last year that Commissioner Casella, you had some questions about. Came out very good. Actually, the $2,700 one, we probably have 11 of them, and we budgeted for 0 last year, and we have 11. And the other ones, we're looking to go way up now. I'm hoping to do 400 of the Links Loyalty memberships. That's the ranges you see on the daily fees worked for us. We dropped our rates there, basically the rates that you see on the bottom there. So it's actually more appealing. You don't have to belong to the links as you did last time to play at a reasonable rate. So the rates you see on the bottom are if you're just walking off the street.
Wow.
That's our proposed budget, 5% decrease on the administration side. We did lose one of our assistant pros who resigned due to family issues. We're looking to replace that with 2 part-time cart attendants. That's going to save some salaries there. $11,000 in the new fleet of carts. It's in your commission tomorrow night for new golf carts. Big difference in the golf carts is we're going to get a great trade-in value on them. They're giving us $1,400 each. We don't have 9-year-old carts like we did before. These are traded 5 years.
You better wait till tomorrow night. You might be persuading us. I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry. Next. And 1% decrease, 1.7 in the adopted budget for maintenance there. And this is some of the campers that we had at the golf course this year from Carol and Sims, also Camp Destination, and with Father and Son Clinic. Any questions?
Go back to the picture on Vice Mayor. Let me see her.
So you stated that you anticipate not needing any additional city funding and that the golf course on track to be balanced with revenues and costs?
This year? Yes.
this year?
Are we looking to make budget this year? Yes.
Okay.
Ron, a lot of the budget, we got to remember, is predicated on weather. I mean, the budget is only as good as the weather plays out for you, correct?
Yes. And the reason why we're going to make budget this year is because we kept the golf carts an extra year. So we own the golf carts now. There's no lease on them. They were a 4-year pay on them. So we made a decision to keep them because they were in decent shape. So, of course, we didn't have to pay a $75,000 extra. Yes, the weather does play an important factor, and we do budget weather every year, but nobody can budget 16 days in January of rain. And that's part of, in reality, what you're saying, Mr. Cassell, Commissioner, is the golf course is going to have to come up with a reserve fund for when we do better in the years to put Story away, because I go to many municipality meetings, and that's what they're all doing. But they're all tapped too because of the weather. I mean, I'm looking over the last 3 years, it's basically like 90 bad weather days a year. When I look over a 10-year stretch, it's 60 days a year. So goes the weather. But I can tell you on the good weather days, we're way up.
And obviously, being an avid golfer, I'm hearing great things. The driving range is
Fantastic.
110% improved. It's enjoyable.
One of the best practice facilities in the area now.
Right. So I just want it to be known that, you've done everything possibly you can to make this financially feasible, but sometimes we're at the hands of Mother Nature.
Right.
So, thank you.
Ron, my comment is that years ago, when I was sitting on the commission, we used to have a waiting list. Do we have a waiting list now?
No.
Okay.
A waiting list to,
They used to have a waiting list for memberships. We used to have to make
No.
rules and limits, and this is how you...
years ago when you had memberships, these other courses didn't have, everybody's got a loyalty card now. So that's why things were changing. When you come up to the golf course now with a loyalty card, that's why you see a $199 card. When you come up to the golf course before Cypress Creek closed, before Polo Trades closed, before all these other courses closed, the first thing, do you have a links card? Well, let me see. They got 5 cards. I got one for Westchester. I got one for Cypress. They all have cards. So if you want to build a steady clientele, which we're doing, we have a loyalty card, which is $199, because they need to play at the links. If they like it, they're going to play a couple times a week. If they don't play at the links and you just come in, you can pay a regular price. That's what you're paying at a discount price now. So the people who like it are playing more now. And that membership's going to build this year.
When you go to Tallahassee, you're losing a golfer, because I won't be paying $199. Hell.
I'll need that.
You will?
That's it.
Okay.
And thank you, Mr. Cazzola, for the truck, putting the advertising.
Yeah, we're going to pursue that.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you. We want to move on to solid waste?
And her first tee shot was down the middle.
Yes. Yeah. All right. I guess we're going to move on to solid waste.
We'll wrap up.
Yeah, we did solid waste.
Did we do?
We did.
Okay, you want to come back tomorrow? I think we finished the general fund. We're doing tomorrow the general capital and the utility fund. Is there anything left? There's risk, I see, and we don't have anything for risk.
Just the utility and the capital, that's really what you're going to have left in solid waste tomorrow.
And that's not going to, that shouldn't take 4 hours. We still have to start at noon then?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we have.
All right, sorry.
Still
started it.
Okay. Now, tomorrow, okay, when can we ask questions about take-home cards? That's one of my pets.
Let us work on that between now and noon tomorrow. We're going to bring back, I made a long list of all the kind of requests for information we need to try to bring back for you tomorrow. So we'll allow some time in there, maybe when we first open up, to have that for you.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
March 12 noon.
All right. Meeting is adjourned.